Chapter 2109. Xiao Hua, you little bastard, you've gone too far. Zhong Peiyuan's voice naturally came over in a flustered and exasperated manner. Today, this young master has already enjoyed himself to the fullest. This is just a small punishment for your Zhong family. As Xiao Hua spoke, he whistled and flew away from the side of Zhongling Mountain Villa. How did the patriarch provoke this god of plague? Zhong Yu's heart was itching with hatred for Xiao Hua. For the past month, he had been patrolling every night for fear that something might go wrong. However, in the end, a disaster still happened today. As for Xiao Hua, he had gone to the west side of Yun City in the past 10 days and had seen everything within a radius of several hundred miles. He had also sent out a lot of fine seeds from his space and was very satisfied. Today, he just happened to pass by Zhongling Mountain Villa and used the Earth Escape technique to come to the Ancestral Hall to take a look. As a result, the Ancestral Hall's defense was very tight, and even had Zhong Tianyao personally overseeing it. Xiao Hua knew that the Zhong family's Ancestral Hall was definitely hiding something other than the gold leaf. Thus, Xiao Hua looked elsewhere with interest, wanting to do something that would make Zhong Tianyao feel disgusted. However, the entire Zhongling Mountain Villa's defense was very tight, and there seemed to be disciples patrolling everywhere. Xiao Hua was also unwilling to make things difficult for these low-level disciples and thus headed towards the southwest direction. This southwest direction seemed to have few traces of people, and the defense was also very loose. However, when Xiao Hua looked carefully, he actually found that there was an extremely powerful restriction underground. When Xiao Hua broke through the restriction and entered, he actually found that it was an extremely complete place for refining tools and Zhong Peiyuan was actually inside. Damn it, I just casually copied some of their refining materials. This can't be considered a lesson. Xiao Hua was somewhat dissatisfied. This Zhong Peiyuan has learned to be careful now. If he doesn't release his magic treasure, this young master's soaring dragon shears can't ruthlessly cut them a few times. And it seems that Zhongling Mountain Villa is also somewhat troublesome. There are actually people screaming. This time, this old fool Zhong will be somewhat troublesome. Ha! However, speaking of which, with this soaring dragon shears, it seems to be more powerful than the flying swords in the past. No wonder my Dao sex cultivators, although they envy sword cultivators, if you really want them to nurture a sword, they won't really do it. Once this magic treasure reaches a certain level, it's indeed powerful. Xiao Hua flew as he pondered. However, Reverend Bright Sword's Dao Heart Sword Seed technique seems to be feasible. Although Dream has yet to awaken, this young master has already sensed the vigorous vitality within it. And a special feeling within the flying sword. I really don't know if the Dream Executor or the Soaring Dragon Scissors will be more powerful. Oh? What is that? Xiao Hua suddenly furrowed his brows. His divine sense swept towards the area behind him. However, when his divine sense swept out, he only saw a palm-sized black shadow flash before it suddenly disappeared. When he looked carefully, there was no trace of it at all. Strange. Xiao Hua was a little surprised. He stopped and flew back. After checking again, he still didn't find anything strange. He smacked his lips and flew up again. When he flew far away, on top of a rock under Xiao Hua, something that looked exactly like a rock moved. However, as soon as this rock left the rock, it immediately turned pitch black and flew in another direction like an arrow from a bow. Husband, why are you smiling so lewdly? Xue Xue opened her eyes and looked at Xiao Hua's lecherous smile. She unconsciously covered her mouth and laughed. Did you peek at some girl coming out of the bath? Or did you see some fairy's spring scenery? TCH, Xiao Hua raised his head and flung his seemingly elegant hair to the side. Is your husband that tasteless? Oh, that's... Xue Xue's eyes lit up. Could it be that husband got the gold leaf from the Zhong family? Speaking of the gold leaf, Xiao Hua was like a deflated balloon. He sighed and said, AI, how could that be? That old fool Zhong is very cautious. I reckon he already has the gold leaf with him. If husband wants it, I can't exchange it. Then I can only capture Zhong Tianyao. Capture a golden core cultivator? Shue shook her head and said very sympathetically, I'm afraid husband still has to cultivate for another 100 years. And Xiao Hua knew that he had the chance to kill Zhong Tianyao, but to capture him, it wouldn't be easy. But if he killed a golden core cultivator for 2 gold leaf, Xiao Hua asked himself if he could do it for the time being. Then what are you so happy about? Shue asked. Ha ha ha, Xiao Hua heard and couldn't help but laugh. He told her about the 2 times he harassed Zhongling Mountain Villa and explained. Since husband can't get the gold leaf, then I'll keep harassing them and make them annoyed. In the worst case, they'll have no choice but to come find husband. Anyway, the gold leaf is useless to them. They should be happy to get rid of husband's harassment. Hee, that's a good idea. Shue pursed her lips and laughed. She seemed to have the same childlike innocence as Xiao Hua. After laughing, Shue said, Actually, the Zhong clan is also overcompensating. From what they said, it seems that there's been some unforeseen event, so they don't want to exchange with husband. Wife is indeed smart. Xiao Hua praised. Before husband went to harass them for the first time, I've already investigated clearly. It turns out that before I arrived at Zhongling Mountain Villa, a golden core cultivator from Changbai sect visited Zhong Tianyao. As for what happened, husband couldn't find out. It seems that only Zhong Tianyao, Zhong Peiyuan, and a few others know. But from Zhong Tianyao's tone that day, it seems that he was threatened by this golden core cultivator. Moreover, it's very likely that the material he needed to repair his artifact was taken away by force. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left Qianma dense stone behind. My husband is right. Shue nodded. If husband knows what material Zhong Tianyao is lacking, if husband has it, you can take it out and exchange with him. Wife's words are reasonable. Xiao Hua disagreed. Although the gold leaf is important, if Zhong Tianyao asks for too much, husband doesn't want to be a sucker. In the end, it really won't work. At this point, a trace of ruthlessness appeared in Xiao Hua's eyes. After all, this gold leaf is related to a Buddhist cultivation method. Xiao Hua must get it. Zhong Tianyao's attitude really made him angry. And husband, let's try again. If it really doesn't work, then we'll make a move. Shue, who was used to Xiaoyu continent's methods, didn't think much of it. She was only worried that Xiao Hua couldn't defeat Zhong Tianyao. Husband knows. Xiao Hua smiled. Right, how's wife's cultivation? Hee, with husband in front, how bad can this concubine be? Shue covered her mouth and said, I'm already familiar with the cultivation method. These few days, I'm expanding my meridians. If there's no accident, I should be able to meet the needs of foundation establishment within a year. Great. Xiao Hua clapped and smiled. He hugged Shue gently and sweetly. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote. -8. Chapter 21:10. Not to mention the warmth of Xiao Hua and Shue, within the Zhongling Mountain Villa, the south side of the womenfolk was already in chaos. Zhong Peiyuan was standing in front of an embroidery building. His face was flickering with uncertainty. Around him, there were many crying sounds. In front of him stood Zhong Yu and Zhong Yejing, who had just walked over. Jing! Zhong Peiyuan opened his mouth. His tone seemed to be a little hesitant. He was actually afraid to hear Zhong Yejing's answer. Third granduncle! Zhong Yejing's face was also extremely ugly. She whispered, Jinger has already checked one by one. There are 34 womenfolk dead. What? This many? Zhong Yu's face turned green. Yes, Zhong Yejing said with a bitter face. Among them were dying children and female cultivators at the 12th level of Qi refinement. The way they died is the same as the tragic death of the nursery disciples a month ago. That damn Xiao Hua! Zhong Peiyuan gritted his teeth and said, He's obviously a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. Where did he get such a ruthless and insidious method? He didn't even let go of a dying child. How can such behavior be worthy of the name of a famous sect? Third granduncle. In this boy's opinion, we need Meng country's Taiching sect, Changbai sect, and other cultivation sects to be witnesses and let them make the decision for our Zhong family. Zhong Yu thought for a moment and whispered. After all, our Zhong family can't compare with the Imperial Thunder sect. It would be fine if she didn't mention Changbai sect, but when she heard Changbai sect, Zhong Peiyuan became angry and said fiercely, Your fist is still harder than your own. If you want others to support you, you have to take out spirit stones. This. Seeing Zhong Peiyuan angry, Zhong Yu immediately realized something and hurriedly lowered her head. What else do you have to say? Zhong Peiyuan had nowhere to vent his anger, so he scolded Zhong Yejing. The first time can be said to be a coincidence, but what about the second time? Are you going to say that Xiaohua is innocent? These 34 womenfolk's lives, was it someone else who took it? If it's not Xiaohua, then tell me, who is it? Zhong Yejing was speechless. She wanted to argue, but she really didn't know what to say. After all, one may know a person's face but not his heart. She and Xiaohua had only met once. Seeing that Zhong Yejing was silent, Zhong Peiyuan continued. You have committed a grave sin by bringing this devil to my Zhong family. In my opinion, you'll surely be heavily punished. But it's precisely because we need people now, so I'll give you a way out and allow you to redeem yourself through meritorious service. Once Xiaohua is killed, you can enter into closed-door cultivation in the Orchid of the Bells courtyard to reflect on your mistakes. Yes, boy understands. Zhong Yejing bowed. At that moment, a young disciple of the 4th level of Qi refining hurriedly flew over. Seeing Zhong Peiyuan throwing a tantrum, he hastily landed on the ground and cowered, not daring to approach. What's the matter? Zhong Peiyuan looked at the disciple and scolded. Bad news, bad news! That disciple shouted in an exaggerated manner. What's the big deal? Zhong Peiyuan reprimanded. Haven't you seen the world yet? Yes, yes. The disciple didn't know how to respond to Zhong Peiyuan's reprimand. What's the matter? Zhong Yu knew that this was his disciple on duty, so he scolded in a low voice. If you have something to say, say it quickly. I'll let the old ancestor know. The disciple hurriedly said. Several medicinal fields in the herb garden have been dug up, not even the roots are left. That's it. Zhong Peiyuan said angrily. Do you still need to report this? He knew that the spirit herbs in the herb garden were common, not rare, and the spirit herbs in several medicinal fields were not worth many spirit stones. Yes, yes, this disciple understands. The disciple nodded and hurriedly turned around. After the disciple left, Zhong Yejing was about to speak, but Zhong Peiyuan frowned and his expression tensed up. He stood there respectfully, and after a while, he bowed again and transmitted a few words. It seemed that Zhong Tianyao had something to tell him. After Zhong Peiyuan finished transmitting his voice, he turned to Zhong Yejing and said, Jinger, go and call Zhong Dong over. The two of you go to the Zhongling Hall and wait for the Patriarch's orders. Yes, Jinger understands. Zhong Yejing hurriedly bowed and accepted the order. However, she was still a little surprised. Although Zhong Yedong's name was similar to hers, and he was also a direct descendant of the Zhong clan, he was her cousin. He was only born a little earlier than her, but their parents gave him a similar name. However, as his name suggested, Zhong Yedong's temper was quite irritable, which was the complete opposite of Zhong Yejing's gentle and quiet personality. After Zhong Yejing left, Zhong Peiyuan did not even look at her. He ordered Zhong Yu to send more people to pay attention to the movements in the village, and flew away himself. Seeing Zhong Peiyuan fly away, the tension in Zhong Yu's heart loosened a little. In fact, there were still some things that he didn't dare to say to Zhong Peiyuan face to face. Over the past month, because of the inexplicable deaths of the disciples in the medicinal garden, the hearts of the people in the manor had already wavered. Many of the tenant farmers who worked in the manor had quietly left, and even more people found excuses to not come over. Many of the chores in the manor were temporarily done by the disciples with cultivation. However, these things were managed by the housekeeper. Even if the housekeeper did not say anything, Zhong Yu had to consider whether it was appropriate for him to say it, The south side of the Zhongling mountain village was brightly lit, and cries of sorrow could be heard everywhere. After all, 34 lives were lost, and many relatives were involved. This night was destined to not be peaceful. However, unlike the chaos in the Zhongling mountain village, about 10 miles away from the Zhongling mountain village, a large number of willow trees surrounded a small lake. The lake water rippled in the night wind, and the willow branches danced on the shore like ghosts baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. On the shore, there was a small courtyard. At this moment, it was boundlessly quiet, and there was not the slightest movement. Woo! The night wind grew stronger, and it actually blew a sound. Pai-li-pa-la! It was unknown which room's window was blown open, but then there was the sound of a window being closed. It seemed that the owner of the room was sitting by the window. Zhong Haoran! A clear, somewhat helpless, and somewhat agitated voice sounded. I don't want you to pity me here. I'd rather live like this. Hurry up and leave, don't bother me here. It's been more than a month, and you've been nagging in my ears during the day and guarding my window at night. You're more annoying than a woman with a loose tongue. This voice was actually Zhong Xiuhan's. Senior sister, you should listen to me. Zhong Haoran's lukewarm voice sounded at the same time. As long as you nod your head, I'll go and beg Marshal Aunt Yijing, beg her to come here, and let her bring you to find Xiaohua. You also know how good the quality of the medicinal pill he gave you last time was. He's a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect, and now he's at Foundation establishment. Even Marshal Aunt Yijing is extremely respectful to him, so it can be seen how deep his cultivation is. I'm sure he has even better medicinal pills on him, and will definitely be able to heal your injuries. Zhong Haoran, you dare to mention my injuries to Xiaohua. Zhong Xiuhan was flustered and exasperated. Back then, he was at Qi Refinement, and I was also at Qi Refinement. Now that he's at Foundation establishment, what about me? How can I even talk about cultivation now? You're showing off my pity in front of him for no reason. Is it because I'm not pitiful enough? Do you want me to lose face in front of Xiaohua? In front of the Imperial Thunder sect? In the country of Xi? It's not that serious. Zhong Haoran still said gently. I think Xiaohua is pretty good. Last time, he gave us the medicinal pill without a second word. This time, if he can help, he will definitely help. Zhong Haoran! You stupid pig head! Zhong Xiuhan scolded again. Do you know my current situation? Do you know what great-grandfather said? Do you know that I'm... At this point, Zhong Xiuhan seemed to have lost all the strength in her body. She collapsed on the floor in the room, sobbing softly. Senior apprentice sister, senior apprentice sister. Outside the room, Zhong Haoran panicked and shouted. Don't cry, don't cry. If you're annoying me, I'll leave right now, please don't cry. Zhong Haoran, you stupid pig head. Zhong Xiuhan cried as she said. If you dare to take a step out of this orchid of the valley, see if I don't ever see you again, not even a word about you. Yes, yes. Zhong Haoran immediately said. I'll stand right here, not even a step away, not even a step away. At the end of his sentence, Zhong Haoran hesitated again. But, senior apprentice sister, you're so annoying. You're already crying. If I don't leave you, you're still crying. What should I do? Pfft. Zhong Xiuhan was so angry that she laughed and scolded. You stupid person, when did I say I was annoying you? You. Didn't you just ask me to leave? Zhong Haoran scratched his head and asked curiously. That was just then, this is now. Zhong Xiuhan said. Okay, yes, I know. Zhong Haoran nodded like a chick pecking at rice. After a while, Zhong Xiuhan's crying gradually subsided. She said softly, Haoran, you've been in the orchid of the valley for more than a month, and you've been delaying your cultivation. Moreover, it's hard to explain to the clan. You'd better leave quickly. You. Senior apprentice sister, are you talking to me? Zhong Haoran was obviously not used to the name Haoran, and said nervously. Of course, if not you, who else? Zhong Xiuhan said anxiously. Everyone in the orchid of the valley is resting. Who else can I call? Yes, yes. Zhong Haoren panicked again. You don't have to rush back. Your matter is more important than anything else. As long as you can recover, I won't be afraid even if I don't cultivate in the future, even if the clan leader banishes me to the orchid of the valley to reflect on my mistakes. Bah, you wish! Zhong Xiuhan knew that Zhong Haoren had no other thoughts, but when she heard those words, her heart was filled with sweetness. It was far more sincere than I'll accompany you to the ends of the world, to the ends of the earth. Yes, yes. Zhong Haoren did not understand what he had said wrong, and quickly nodded. Looking at Zhong Haoren's panicked expression, Zhong Yuhan was worried for a while. After listening for a while, she said, Haoren, there are many beautiful female cultivators in the Zhong family. You just need to hurry up and cultivate. Even if you don't reach the foundation establishment stage, there will be many women who want to marry you. Why do you have to be like this? -8. Chapter 21:11. Me? Zhong Haoren's scalp was about to explode when he heard Zhong Xiuhan mention a marriage alliance. He was almost incoherent. I don't want to marry someone else. I just want to see senior sister every day, that's enough. Sigh. Zhong Xiuhan knew that it was impossible to get any sweet words out of Zhong Haoren's mouth. This sentence was the limit of what Zhong Haoren could say. Haoren, do you know that I've become a cripple now? Zhong Xiuhan clenched her teeth, and tears were about to fall. I know, Zhong Haoren immediately said. I know that senior sister couldn't reach foundation establishment that day and forcefully took the second foundation establishment pill. Because your meridians couldn't hold more true qi, they exploded. If your meridians can't be repaired, you won't be able to cultivate in the future. You'll be the same as Immortal. Damn Haoren, can't you be more tactful? Zhong Xiuhan said angrily again. Just these words of yours will anger me to death. Yes, I won't say it, Zhong Haoren hurriedly replied. Sigh, since you know, you should know the pros and cons of this. Zhong Xiuhan said faintly. Even family head, a golden core cultivator, was helpless after seeing it. That Xiaohua just reached foundation establishment. What can he do? Senior sister. Zhong Haoren shook his head. You can't say that. Although Xiaohua's cultivation isn't as high as family head's, but he's a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect. It's impossible that the Imperial Thunder Sect doesn't have a pill to repair meridians, right? Sigh, Haoren, my meridians aren't simply damaged. My entire body's meridians are broken. I heard that the Xiaoyu continent has the heaven-mending pill. Only that thing can reconnect my meridians. However, that's a legendary item. Moreover, even if they have it, what can I use to exchange for it? Zhong Xiuhan sighed. Don't forget, you and I are just two insignificant disciples of the Zhong family. Now that I'm a cripple, other than you, other than the widows and widows of the Lily of the Valley, who else would think of me? Senior Martial Sister, Zhong Haoren called out. Don't be sad. We have to ask before we know, right? If Xiaohua really has that heavenly mending pill, it has to have a price. Even if I don't have spirit stones now, wait until I reach foundation establishment, wait until I reach Jindan. I will definitely return this favor to Xiaohua. Silly Haoren! Zhong Xiuhan sighed again. Just based on your simple words, how could Xiaohua give you the pill? What do you mean? Zhong Haoren seemed to wake up. Does senior sister mean that you agreed to look for Xiaohua? Humph, your legs and mouth are on your body, why are you asking me? Zhong Yuhan scolded. But if you don't agree, I don't dare to go. Zhong Haoren was in a difficult position. What if I ask for the pill and you don't take it? I begged you for more than a month before you agreed. If I went without saying a word, wouldn't you be even angrier? Seeing your sincerity, I agree. Zhong Yuhan chuckled. That's great. Zhong Haoren was overjoyed, then smiled bitterly and said somewhat pitifully. Senior Martial Sister, can I take a step? Since you didn't let me move, I didn't dare to move at all. Now my feet are numb. You deadhead! Zhong Yuan said angrily. Can't you secretly move? Yes, I will secretly move now, Zhong Haoren said immediately. AI, it's been more than a month since you saw Xiaohua. He has already left. Where are you going to find him? Zhong Yuan waited until Zhong Haoren stamped his feet, then said, Besides, how can Xiaohua have the heavenly mending pill? Hearing Zhong Yuan's words, Zhong Haoren comforted. Even if Xiaohua left, Marshal Uncle Yi Jing definitely has his communication talisman. I will ask Marshal Uncle Yi Jing to come over first. As for whether Xiaohua has the heavenly mending pill or not, if he doesn't, Imperial Thunder Sect should have it, right? Haoren, you are too naive. Zhong Yuan looked at Zhong Haoren with heartache. At this time, the sky was already bright, and the rays of light reflected on Zhong Haoren's extremely sincere face. The eyes on his face were so clear, and no words of praise could compare to a glance from his eyes. Zhong Yuan couldn't help but feel sour in her heart. Why didn't she see it earlier? Or perhaps she shouldn't have been too reckless that day. If she didn't build her foundation, then so be it. If she could protect this sincere Zhong Haoren, it would be 100 times better than the current situation. Oh, it's daybreak again. Zhong Haoren looked at Zhong Yuan's tearful face and said with a smile, Senior sister, wait for me. What are you going to do? Zhong Yuan asked curiously. Every morning, you will immediately come here for an hour. What are you going to do? This? Zhong Haoren hesitated and said, I won't hide anything from you, but this matter, you can't know about it for the time being. You dare! Zhong Yuan said angrily. You were fine just now, why are you not listening to me now? Do you think I can ignore you just because I can ignore you? Senior sister. Zhong Haoren's face was extremely red, and his eyes were wide open. He quickly waved his hand and said, Senior sister, it's not that I don't want to tell you, but once I tell you it won't work. You, go, don't force me. Hearing Zhong Haoren's words, Zhong Yuan's eyes reddened again. She lowered her head and said, Haoren, you, go, I won't ask any more. You still want to talk to me? Zhong Haoren was a little troubled. If you want to go, go quickly. If you're too slow, I won't talk to you. Zhong Yuan didn't forget to reprimand Zhong Haoren even though her eyes were red. Yes. Zhong Haoren was overjoyed. He quickly walked out and activated the flying talisman. He flew over the small lake beside the orchid of the valley and flew towards the mountain closest to the lake. That mountain wasn't high, but it was the highest mountain in the area. Zhong Haoren flew for a while before he reached the peak. At this time, the sun had already risen and shone on the mountain peak. The biting cold wind on the mountain peak was somewhat warm. Zhong Haoren walked familiarly to a stone slab on the mountain peak. The stone slab was unusually clean, completely different from the dust on the rocks nearby. Zhong Haoren's eyes looked at the bright red sun in the east. He knelt on the stone slab and kowtowed 9 times in a row. He said very sincerely, Heavens above, I, Zhong Haoren, am truly an insignificant cultivator. I, Zhong Haoren, am now prostrating myself before the heavens. With my incomparably humble heart, I beg the heavens once again. My senior sister's meridians have been destroyed and she can no longer cultivate. I, Zhong Haoren, am willing to exchange my meridians for hers so that she can continue cultivating. I don't know if my words will reach the heavens, but I am willing to use my heart's sincerity to believe that the heavens will open their eyes and hear my prayers. -8. Chapter 21:12. If this request is too difficult, please give me the heaven-mending pill, so that I can heal senior sister's meridians. If my request is not successful, I hope that Xiaohua of the Imperial Thunder Sect can bring the pill with him to help this kid. As long as senior sister can be happy, this kid is willing to break my bones. Although Zhong Haoren was very clumsy in front of Zhong Yuan, he was extremely skilled in saying these words. If he hadn't been thinking for a long time, then as he said, he had been praying for dozens of days, or even hundreds of days. After praying, Zhong Haoren stood up and prepared to leave the stone slab. However, at this moment, his heart moved, and a trace of hesitation flashed in his eyes. He knelt down again and kowtowed 9 times. At this time, his forehead was already red. Zhongharen said, "This kid, Zhongharen, is here to worship Senior Xiaohua. If you are still in Ming country, please hear this kid's heartfelt words, please come back quickly. This kid, Zhongharen, is begging Senior Xiaohua. I hope that you have the heaven-mending pill in your storage bag. Even if you don't have the heaven-mending pill, the Imperial Thunder Sect also has the secret formula to repair the meridians of the whole body. I hope that the heavens can borrow Senior Xiaohua's hand to fulfill this little request of mine. If Senior Xiaohua can cure Senior Sister, this kid will definitely. Zhongharen said a few words, but he couldn't think of anything. After all, he also heard this method of praying from his grandmother. It was a helpless method when one's strength was exhausted. He was forced to kowtow and beg like this because he had no other choice. Moreover, when he saw Xiaohua that day, he thought that Xiaohua had kindly given them the pill before. That kind of desire, that kind of eagerness involuntarily grew. He was like a person who fell into the water and met a straw. He used all his strength to reach out and grab it, regardless of whether this straw could save him or not. He unilaterally believed that Xiaohua could definitely bring about a turnaround for his senior sister. However, when he really wanted to make a promise to Xiaohua, he couldn't find the right words. After all, Xiaohua was not the heavens, and some words were not suitable. Zhongharen hesitated for a moment, and finally said, "If Senior Xiaohua Xiao is able to heal Senior Sister's meridians, then Junior Zhongharen will definitely kowtow to Senior Xiaohua Xiao every morning and evening, kowtow to him for his great achievements, kowtow to him for his longevity." After saying all this, Zhongharen really couldn't think of anything else, so he stood up and went down the mountain. However, what no one expected was that in the distant cave, within the Buddha fire and Xiaohua's Buddha heart that was cultivating with shui, a fine mark suddenly appeared. That fine mark was extremely fine and faint, and even Xiaohua's Buddha sense couldn't see it. At this time, Xiaohua was meditating with his eyes closed. Suddenly, he sensed something and opened his eyes. He looked around strangely and thought, it seems like something happened. And it seems to be in the direction of Zhongling Mountain Village? Humph, it must be that old man Zhong who is scheming against this young master. Xiaohua sneered. This young master won't fall for it. However, when Xiaohua closed his eyes again, he opened them again after a moment. He frowned and pondered. No, this feeling is different from the feeling of danger in the past. It's an indescribable feeling. It seems to be coming from the Buddha Sarira, and not from the hands of karma in the space. Should I go or not? Xiaohua was a little hesitant. After all, he had just disturbed Zhongling Mountain Village last night, and Zhong Tianya was definitely furious there. If he went now, he would be fighting with his life on the line. Husband, what are you doing? Shui was very sensitive and sensed it. This? Xiaohua didn't know how to explain it to Shui, and smiled apologetically. Your husband's heart is a little uneasy, as if something happened at Zhongling Mountain Village? Ah? Sudden inspiration? Shui was stunned, and said in astonishment. This seems to be a legendary great ability, right? What do you mean? Xiaohua was also astonished. When I was young, I heard from my uncle that when the ancient almighty cultivators cultivated to a very high level, they would have a kind of magical ability to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages. As long as there was something related to them, they would be able to do it on a whim. They could even pinch their fingers to know what it was and choose the most beneficial thing for them. That's right. That's right. Isn't this the hands of karma? Xiaohua's eyes spun rapidly as he thought to himself. Husband, if you don't have a bad feeling, I suggest you go and take a look. Shui suggested. Who knows, there might be something related to you there. Maybe it's the gold leaf that you're thinking about. Not bad, you have a point. Xiaohua thought about the gold leaf and the Buddha Sarira, and nodded. My wife, please cultivate in the formation. your husband will be back soon. Xiao Hua left the cave, and changed his direction, and slowly flew toward Zhongling Mountain Village. However, after flying for a while, Xiao Hua gradually changed his direction. He was actually heading toward the peak of the Orchid of the Valley. Isn't this the brat called Zhonghauren? Xiao Hua's divine sense was searching, and he saw Zhonghauren, who was heading to Zhongling Mountain Village to look for Zhong Yejing. After thinking for a while, Xiao Hua returned to his original appearance, and pretended not to know anything as he flew past Zhonghauren. Xiao. Senior Xiao? I didn't see wrongly, right? Zhonghauren's expression definitely shocked Xiao Hua. It was as if he saw an immortal descending from the heavens, and he was extremely surprised. Senior Xiao, you really heard this brat's prayer. You really can heal my senior sister's meridians. Zhonghauren spoke incoherently, and he had completely lost his etiquette. He stepped forward and grabbed Xiao Hua's robe as he spoke. Xiao Hua was bewildered, and he frowned. Zhonghauren, what do you mean by that? Can't you explain it clearly? Moreover, in the past month weren't you at Zhongling Mountain Village? Didn't you hear the news at Zhongling Mountain Village? Zhonghauren said excitedly. Senior Xiao, you don't know. Then Zhonghauren told Xiao Hua about how he prayed to the heavens and Xiao Hua, and he explained. When this brat saw Senior Xiao that day, he wanted to ask Senior Xiao for help. However, you also saw the situation that day. This brat didn't have a chance to speak, so this brat came from the village to Orchid of the Valley to discuss this matter with Senior Sister. Senior Sister didn't agree, so this brat went to the mountain peak to pray every day. Oh? Where did you pray? Can you bring this Xiao to see it? Xiao Hua was even more puzzled. This was the first time he had heard of such a strange matter. Of course. Zhonghauren was extremely surprised. Whatever Xiao Hua wanted him to do now, he would agree without hesitation. When the two of them arrived at the mountain peak, Xiao Hua looked at the stone slab that Zhonghauren was kneeling on, and he fell into deep thought. His Buddhist heart should be here. In other words, he could actually sense the matter that Zhonghauren prayed to him. This was something that he couldn't explain no matter how hard he racked his brains. Senior Xiao. Zhonghauren waited for a long time, and without the slightest bit of impatience, he said in a low voice. Senior, do you have any other questions? Xiao Hua shook his head blankly and said with a bitter smile. This Xiao wants to ask, but I don't know where to start. Then, does Senior Xiao have the heaven-mending pill in his storage bag? Zhonghauren suddenly felt that his mouth was a little dry. Heaven-mending pill? Xiao Hua smiled and shook his head. This Xiao has never heard of any heaven-mending pill? Then, does the Imperial Thunder Sect have it? Zhonghauren seemed to be unwilling to give up his evil intentions. This Xiao doesn't know. Xiao Hua was clear that even if the Imperial Thunder Sect had the heaven-mending pill, it was impossible for him to know. Then, can Senior Xiao heal Senior Sister Xiazi's meridians? Zhonghauren felt that he was a little suffocated. Meridians! Xiao Hua seemed to have thought of something and couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Even if he passed the dragon transformation art to Zhong Xiuhan, it didn't seem to be able to repair her meridians, right? Moreover, it was impossible for him to casually pass the dragon transformation art to Zhong Xiuhan. Senior Xiao, Zhonghauren said with a sad face. Senior Xiao, this junior begged you. How can you not have a way? How about this? Xiao Hua thought for a moment and said, You should bring me to see Zhong Xiuhan. This Xiao will take a look at the situation first. Perhaps there's a way? Yes, how could I forget? Zhonghauren slapped his head and said dejectedly. This junior was completely flustered when he saw Senior Xiao. This junior was really disrespectful. Please! Obviously, Zhonghauren had completely ignored that, perhaps. By the time they arrived at the Orchid of the Valley courtyard, the sky was already bright. In the courtyard and by the lake, there were already some old people walking around. Although there were many people, most of them were very low-level cultivators. They looked like they were already in their twilight years. Everyone looked at Xiao Hua and Zhong Haoren, their listless eyes unable to stir up the slightest ripple. Xiao Hua had already scanned this place with his divine perception, so he didn't find it strange. He followed Zhong Haoren to an exquisite little house. "Haoren? You're back so soon?" Zhong Xiuhan obviously heard Zhong Haoren's footsteps and said happily, "Marshal Uncle Jing, she didn't come?" He, Zhong Haoren said with a smile. "I didn't even see Marshal Uncle Jing," Zhong Haoren said before entering the little house. "Humph, Zhong Haoren, you pig head! I told you! That mysterious thing of yours is completely useless," Zhong Xiuhan scolded. However, just as she finished scolding, Zhong Xiuhan was stunned. Wasn't Xiao Hua following behind Zhong Haoren? That Xiao Hua whom she had met several decades ago, and whose appearance hadn't changed in the slightest? Zhong Xiuhan couldn't sense Xiao Hua's cultivation, but she didn't dare to be negligent. Just as she reached out to cover her mouth, she immediately bowed and greeted. "Junior Zhong Xiuhan greets Senior Xiao." He. Seeing Zhong Xiuhan and Zhong Haoren's deep affection, Xiao Hua felt very comfortable in his heart. He thought about how the two of them were still bickering outside Mingxi even though they were already injured. And bickering wasn't right. It was Zhong Xiuhan who was bullying Zhong Haoren. And now, Zhong Xiuhan had already become a cripple, but Zhong Haoren still didn't abandon her and tried his best to think of a way. He really lived up to the name, Haoren. -8. Chapter 21:13. Suddenly, Xiao Hua remembered the oath that Zhong Haoren made to him, and then looked at Zhong Yuhan thoughtfully. Zhong Yuhan was pretty, and she looked like she was used to ordering Zhong Haoren around. Although Xiao Hua was here and she had changed to be respectful, she didn't take Zhong Haoren's carefulness seriously. "I've been thinking too much." Xiao Hua laughed in his heart and helped Zhong Yuhan up. "Zhong Yuhan, this Xiao was just passing by and happened to meet Zhong Haoren. This Xiao didn't know what he said. This Xiao didn't have any heaven-mending pill, and I didn't know that the Imperial Thunder sect had such a miraculous pill. This Xiao just thought it was a coincidence." Zhong Yuhan was very disappointed, and she couldn't hide the deep sense of loss between her eyebrows. However, Xiao Hua immediately changed the topic. "However, since the heavens let this Xiao pass by and meet two fellow Taoists, this Xiao might want to take a look. Perhaps the heavens have already given this Xiao a method to cure you? Senior Xiao, please be merciful." Zhong Haoren couldn't help but salute from the side. "Yes, Senior Xiao, please help." Zhong Yuhan couldn't help but feel hopeful. Although Xiao Hua was a Foundation establishment cultivator, he was from the Imperial Thunder sect, which was 100 times stronger than the Zhong family, right? And Xiao Hua waved his hand, turned his head and asked, "Zhong Haoren, what is this place?" "Senior Xiao, this is the Orchid of the Valley Courtyard, a place where the disciples of my Zhong family reflect on their mistakes." Zhong Haoren smiled apologetically. "At the same time, there are also some old and weak people who are recuperating here." "Oh, so it's like that." Xiao Hua nodded and said, "Zhong Haoren, you go out first. Wait for this Xiao to take a look at Zhong Yuhan's injuries, then we will make a plan." "Yes, this junior will go out now. This junior will guard the door." Zhong Haoren didn't dare to say anything, and carefully walked out and closed the door. Xiao Hua glanced around and said, "Zhong Yuhan, close your eyes as if you're cultivating." "Yes, this junior understands." Zhong Yuhan obediently sat cross-legged and closed her eyes. Xiao Hua first scanned Zhong Yuhan with his divine sense, and then stretched out his left hand, 2 fingers strangely placed on Zhong Yuhan's wrist. Xiao Hua himself also sat down cross-legged. He actually used the Huangqi technique. After a while, Xiao Hua furrowed his brows and withdrew his finger. Immediately after, another strand of true origin flowed into Zhong Xiuhan's meridians. However, just as the true qi began to circulate in Zhong Xiuhan's meridians, a feeling of enlightenment, or perhaps a sense of déjà vu, spontaneously arose. It was as if he had treated such damaged meridians before. "Meridian nourishing pill!" Xiao Hua almost groaned. A familiar pill and pill recipe appeared in his mind, and even more pill refining techniques and pill recipes gradually flashed in his mind. Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent, and hurriedly let go of his hand. He closed his eyes and carefully captured the memories that flowed like a fountain. Zhong Yuhan waited for a long time, but seeing that Xiaohua didn't do anything, she unconsciously opened her eyes. When he saw Xiaohua's expression, he thought that Xiaohua was thinking carefully. Therefore, she didn't dare to make a sound and only waited patiently by the side. After about half an hour, Zhong Haoren, who was outside the hut, was somewhat impatient. After all, Xiaohua only wanted to see what the situation was and didn't say that he could definitely cure it. Just as Zhong Haoren was worrying about his gains and losses, he heard Xiaohua call out from inside. "Zhong Haoren, come in!" Zhong Haoren heard Xiaohua's indifferent tone, and felt that there was nothing special. He unconsciously became happy. He pushed open the door and quickly walked in. He bowed and said, "Senior Xiao Yu, and this Xiao has already seen Zhong Xiuhan's meridians." Xiaohua looked at the cultivator whose eyes were filled with joy and said with a smile, "Although the situation is very bad, this Xiao has some confidence." "Really?" Zhong Haoren was ecstatic when he heard this. His knees went soft, and he was about to kneel in front of Xiaohua. And Xiaohua hurriedly waved his hand and stopped Zhong Haoren from kneeling. He looked at Zhong Xiuhan again. "However, I can't treat it right now." "Why?" Zhong Haoren asked anxiously. "This Xiao still has some things that I haven't gathered," Xiaohua said indifferently. "What does Senior want?" "This Junior will help you find it." Zhong Haoren patted his chest and said. Xiaohua held his chin with his hand and looked at Zhong Haoren. He seemed to have made a decision. He patted Zhong Haoren's shoulder and said, "Come with me, I will explain it to you." "Yes." Zhong Haoren looked at Zhong Xiuhan and followed Xiaohua out. However, after a moment, Zhong Haoren came back in a daze. His eyes were blank and he slightly avoided Zhong Xiuhan's gaze. "Haoren, what's wrong? What did Senior Xiao say?" Zhong Xiuhan said with some worry. "Is Senior Xiao's request too high?" "No, no." When Zhong Haoren heard this, the worry on his face disappeared. He smiled and said, "Senior Xiao's request is very simple. You don't need to think too much. Senior Xiao said that it won't take long, at most a month, to cure your meridians." "Ah? Really?" Zhong Xiuhan was overjoyed and almost jumped up from the ground. "So I can continue to cultivate?" "Of course." Zhong Haoren nodded affirmatively. "Thank you, Haoren." Zhong Xiuhan excitedly hugged Zhong Haoren and nestled her head on Zhong Haoren's chest. If it was before, Zhong Haoren would definitely be dizzy and might even fall on the ground in joy. But this time, Zhong Haoren's face only reddened for a moment, and a trace of a bitter smile hung on his mouth. He stretched out his stiff arm and his trembling hand stroked Zhong Xiuhan's beautiful hair. Zhong Xiuhan felt Zhong Haoren's action, and how could she still scold him? She only tightened her hands and firmly hugged Zhong Haoren's waist. At this moment, Xiaohua's divine sense swept through the small room and a trace of a smile flashed on the corner of his mouth. This smile had an indescribable meaning. "Meridian Nourishing Pill! It's a pill that specializes in repairing meridians and dantian. The main ingredients are crimson pearl grass and scarlet flame grass." Xiaohua's smile flashed, and a happy expression appeared on his face. He thought to himself, "Obviously, just based on the names of these two spiritual herbs, Xiaoyu continent definitely doesn't have them. However, these two kinds of spiritual herbs, as well as some supplementary spiritual herbs, are in my mind. Just now, I roughly searched through the space, and unexpectedly, there are ready-made spiritual herbs. Moreover, they are also very old. It seems that they were born from the seeds of the 100 herbs gate that won't germinate. This means that the meridian soothing pill should be able to be refined successfully. However, whether or not it can completely repair Zhong Xiuhan's meridians, I don't have much confidence. Of course, if the meridian soothing pill is effective, then it would be the heaven-mending pill that they speak of. If something happens when Shui Shui is building her foundation, then this pill will still be useful. -8. Chapter 21:14. It seems that this meridian-nourishing pill or heaven-mending pill must be refined this time. Xiaohua made up his mind and returned to the cave. Seeing Xiaohua return, Shui Shui naturally asked again. Xiaohua didn't hide anything and told her the story. Shui Shui was already very surprised that Xiaohua could refine the heaven-mending pill, but after thinking about it again, she realized that the heaven-mending pill was far inferior to Xiaohua's sudden inspiration. "Husband, I really don't know how to envy you." Shui Shui smiled bitterly. "You have to know, you have just reached foundation establishment. If you were at spirit-severing stage at this time, I definitely wouldn't be surprised. Although that is an ancient magical ability, there are still some relics in the cultivation sects and some mutated magical abilities. For example, some deducing money is to sprinkle a handful of money left behind from ancient times on the ground and use some special magical abilities to deduce what will happen. Husband, you don't need to do anything and can sense what is going to happen. Maybe." Xiaohua scratched his head. He couldn't tell Shui Shui about the Buddhist sect, so he couldn't explain the sensing of the Buddha's relics. However, Xiaohua still said, "In that case, I will start refining the heaven-mending pill. You and I have stayed here for a long time, let's change places and go to Orchid of the Valley courtyard. Zhong Tianya will never think of that place. Anything is fine." Shui Shui smiled sweetly. "With husband's arrangement, anywhere is fine." Then, Shui Shui said apologetically, "Husband, actually, I'm afraid I'm afraid I've delayed your cultivation." "Huh? What do you mean by that?" Xiaohua was slightly stunned and asked curiously. Shui Shui said, "Husband is now at the middle stage of foundation establishment, so you should cultivate in seclusion. Moreover, husband can refine pills by himself, so you don't need to rely on the sect's supply. Taking pills while improving your cultivation, the late stage of foundation establishment is just around the corner. And you, for me, ran so far and involved so many trivial matters. How can you improve your cultivation?" Hee. Xiaohua smiled and reached out to hold Shui Shui's soft hand, and said warmly, "For men, some things can't be done, and some things must be done. Accompanying my wife to cultivate is what I must do as a husband. As for cultivation? Can't you see that your husband has already refined the brilliant flower pill? Are you taking it every day and cultivating every day?" When Shui Shui heard this, her heart was as sweet as honey. She clenched her fists and said, "I always feel like I'm a burden to my husband. Otherwise, my husband would be able to go further." However, there were times when she thought, if cultivation was like this, so what if I didn't build my foundation? If we walk like this for the rest of our lives and look at the sea for the rest of our lives, wouldn't it be more beautiful? It's better not to build a foundation." Xiaohua was slightly stunned. He knew that Shui Shui seemed to be very afraid of foundation establishment. She was afraid that she would lose her life if she didn't pass, so she didn't dare to enter foundation establishment. Thus, Xiaohua smiled and said, "Husband refined this heaven-mending pill for wife's sake. If wife, and husband is only saying in case something happens to wife, this heaven-mending pill can also be useful." Shui Shui's eyes flashed with a trace of gloom, but she still smiled and said, "Husband, aren't you cursing me? Forget it, let's not talk about it. Let's leave." "Okay." As Xiaohua spoke, he put away the rabbit spell formation and brought Shui Shui to the mountain peak where Zhong Haoren made his wish. He released the puppets and opened 2 caves on the stone wall. Then, he set up the rabbit spell formation and protected these 2 caves. Only then did he start refining the meridian-nourishing pill in one of the caves. The technique used to refine the meridian-nourishing pill was completely different from the Dawn Rain continent. All kinds of spells were used, and they all faintly stirred up changes in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. There were even some sounds of wind and thunder. This made Xiaohua quite puzzled, because in his memory, there weren't so many strange phenomena. However, In any case, Xiaohua started refining the meridian nourishing pill. His memories regarding alchemy also increased, and his alchemy technique also neared perfection. At the same time when Xiaohua was refining the pill, Zhong Yejing was flying out of Zhongling Mountain Villa with a tall and sturdy cultivator. That cultivator's face was unruly, and his slender eyes were very disdainful. From time to time, he would reveal an impatient expression. "Brother Dong." Zhong Yejing saw this situation, and there was a trace of worry on her face. She said in a low voice, "This matter concerns the rise and fall of my Zhong family. It's very important. You have to listen to sister's arrangements." Okay, that cultivator was Zhong Yedong. With an impatient expression, he flicked his sleeve and said, "You've said this countless times since we left the villa. I naturally know what to do." "Yes." Zhong Yejing was also helpless. At this time, the Zhongling Mountain Villa was in a state of unrest. Everyone else was on guard, afraid that Xiaohua would suddenly kill his way into the villa. No one dared to leave without permission. Only she and Zhong Yedong were temporarily unable to help, so they were sent out by Zhong Tianyao. Their purpose was very simple, and that was to leave Zhongling Mountain Villa to look for help. There were many cultivation families in the south of Ming Country, but there weren't many families with profound cultivation who had reached the Golden Core realm. And the closest families to the center of Yun City were the Fei family of Ji City and the Qin family of Fan City. These two families' patriarchs, Fei Xiqing and Qin Kai, were already in the early Golden Core realm, which was the same as Zhong Tianyao. Zhong Tianyao wanted to capture Xiaohua, or even kill him, but he couldn't do it alone. Therefore, he set his sights on the two nearby cultivation families. After flying for several hours, a hot aura began to appear in front of them. A red mountain range appeared in front of them. Zhong Yejing knew that this was the Red Crane Mountain where the Fei family of Ji City was located. "Brother Dong," Zhong Yejing said in a low voice, but before she could finish, Zhong Yedong sneered. "Are you the brother or am I the brother? Do I need you to remind me again and again? After entering Red Crane Mountain, I'll just treat myself as a mute, okay?" "That's not necessary." Zhong Yejing smiled apologetically and said, "Brother Dong, just don't get angry." "How can I not get angry? Your words made me angry before I even entered the mountain," Zhong Yedong said angrily. "Seniors, where did you come from? Did you come to pay a visit to my Fei family?" While they were talking, several aura refining disciples on duty flew over and asked with a bow, "Damn it, if I didn't come to pay a visit to your Fei family, why did I come to this Red Crane Mountain?" Zhong Yedong's words made Zhong Yejing feel helpless. "Seniors, where did you come from? Why did you come to my Fei family?" Fortunately, Zhong Yejing and Zhong Yedong were foundation-building cultivators, so how could the aura-refining disciples dare to be disrespectful? They didn't dare to take Zhong Yedong's words seriously and still asked respectfully, "We're disciples of Yun City's Zhong family. We came to Red Crane Mountain this time because we have an important matter to discuss with your family's patriarch. Please inform him." Zhong Yejing knew she had a request, so she didn't dare to be negligent. She stepped forward and said in a warm voice, "This?" The disciple on duty was a little embarrassed. He smiled apologetically and said, "It's not that Junior doesn't want to inform seniors. If it was someone else, it would have been fine, but Patriarch has been discussing tool refining techniques with Fan City's Qin family's patriarch these past few days. He's already told us not to meet ordinary people." Zhong Yejing understood that the so-called ordinary people must be cultivators below the Golden Core realm. However, Zhong Yedong sneered and said, "What do you mean ordinary people? I've traveled a long way just to pay a visit to old Master Fei, so how did I become an ordinary person? If I had nothing to do, who would come here? It's so hot here, how can it be more comfortable than my Zhongling Mountain Villa? Hee, senior, please turn back." The disciples on duty didn't seem to give Zhong Yedong any face and refused politely with a smile. "Humph." Zhong Yedong waved his hand and was about to use a confinement technique. Zhong Yejing panicked and quickly stood in front of Zhong Yedong. She really didn't want to come out with Zhong Yedong, but for their safety, Zhong Tianyao made this arrangement. However, she didn't expect him to attack an aura-refining disciple the moment he saw the Fey family's disciple. How was this the attitude of someone who came to ask for help? Brother Dong! Zhong Yejing clapped her hand and took out an arrow token. She said angrily, "Do you recognize my Zhong family's patriarch token?" Zhong Yedong's face tightened, and he hurriedly stopped and respectfully saluted the arrow token. Zhong Yedong greets patriarch. Brother Dong, fortunately, you know that seeing the patriarch token is the same as seeing the patriarch. Zhong Yejing snorted and no longer paid attention to him. She turned to the disciple on duty and said, "This is my Zhong family's patriarch token. My Zhong family has indeed encountered a crisis. If the patriarch wasn't in the mountain villa, he would have come long ago. Please take the patriarch token and report to him." So it's like that. The disciple on duty obviously knew the importance of the patriarch token. He stretched out his hand and took the arrow token. He smiled apologetically and said, "In that case, please wait for a moment. This junior will go and report to him." "Thank you." Zhong Yejing nodded. After the disciple flew away, the other disciples smiled apologetically and said, "Seniors, please follow us. Please wait at the mountain gate." Fei family's Mount Feiha had earth fire. Below the mountain range, crimson flames surged. It was similar to the Flame Forest Mountains. Zhong Yejing and Zhong Yedong followed the disciples to the mountainside. A huge rock was emitting a faint heat. At this temperature, there was no green vegetation. Similarly, brown thorns covered the entire Mount Feiha. Not long after, two early-stage foundation building cultivators flew over together with the Zhong family's patriarch token in their hands. Seeing the two cultivators with the same cultivation level as her, Zhong Yejing was delighted. She knew that Fei Xiqing had agreed to meet them, so she sent the two cultivators to welcome them. "Fellow Taoist Zhong, please." The two cultivators flew over and politely handed the Zhong family's patriarch token back to Zhong Yejing. They smiled and said, "I am Fei Ming, and this is my junior brother, Fei Yulian. The two of us are here to welcome the two fellow Taoists under the orders of the patriarch." "Well said, well said." Zhong Yedong finally smiled. Zhong Yejing took the token and returned the greeting. "Thank you, fellow Taoists." Then, Zhong Yejing and Zhong Yedong followed the two Fei family disciples into Mount Feiha and arrived at the Fei family's guest hall. The Fei clan was different from the Zhong clan. They didn't build their foundation in the manor. Instead, they used Mount Feiha as their base. They opened up a cave on Mount Feiha and built their pavilions along the mountain. This guest hall was located in a rather large cave. -8. Chapter 21:15. Fei Ming and Fei Yulian chatted with Zhong Yejing and Zhong Yedong while the low-level disciples served them tea. In the beginning, Zhong Yejing was still very polite, but after 2 hours, she became somewhat impatient. After all, they had already been out for several days, and Xiao Hua would sneak attack Zhongling Mountain Villa at any time. Every sneak attack would inevitably take the lives of dozens of people. Zhong Yejing could not wait any longer. She couldn't wait to invite Fei Xiqing and Qin Kai to Zhongling Mountain Villa and capture Xiao Hua. In fact, it was a bit strange. If Qin Kai wasn't at Feiha Mountain, Zhong Yejing would have invited Fei Xiqing and Dao Fanqing, and it would take much longer than now. However, since Zhong Yejing already knew that Qin Kai happened to be at Mount Feiha, she could invite both of them at the same time and save a lot of time. She already had the idea of going back immediately. Therefore, this small wait would seem very long. "Fellow Taoist Fei!" Before Zhong Yejing could speak, Zhong Yedong spoke first. He had been patient before, but now he couldn't help it. "What's wrong with your Fei family head? Why hasn't he come out yet? I'm still waiting to go back." Fei Ming and Fei Yulian were obviously stunned. They looked at each other, and Fei Yulian said indifferently, "How would I know what the family head is doing? He is a golden core cultivator, and he doesn't need to tell others what he does. Since he wants us to accompany him, we will accompany him. If fellow Taoist Zhong is impatient, you can go. Regardless of whether fellow Taoist Zhong stays or leaves, my Fei family welcomes you." "Pa!" Zhong Yedong slammed his hand on the chair and said angrily, Fei Yulian, is this how your Fei family treats its guests? What's wrong with my Fei family's hospitality? Fei Yulian also stood up and said coldly, My Fei clan will treat any cultivator who is polite and courteous with respect. My Fei clan will also not treat anyone who is rude with respect. You brat, you dare to call me rude? Zhong Yedong was angry. He slammed his hand as if he was going to take out a yellow talisman. Zhong Yejing was anxious. She quickly grabbed his hand and said, Brother Dong, don't forget the family head's orders. But... Zhong Yedong's face was red, and his veins were bulging. But what? My Fei family doesn't treat you with respect? Fei Yulian sneered and said, I didn't say that fellow Taoist Zhong was rude. Why did fellow Taoist Zhong walk into the trap yourself? Hee, fellow Taoist Fei, please don't blame me. Zhong Yejing smiled apologetically. Brother Dong is also anxious. What you don't know is that my Zhong clan has encountered difficulties. If we delay for even half a day, I'm afraid that dozens of lives will be lost. So, I hope that fellow Taoist can make an exception. Please ask the Fei family's elders to come out. Zhong said Yulian was, Yulian, Yulian, and Yulian Yayan. Oh? Fei Ming raised his eyebrows and looked at Zhong Yedong. Zhong Yedong was panting heavily and looked at him coldly. You can't do that. I'm afraid people will say that my Fei family treats our guests poorly. Fei Ming waved his hand and refused. Don't say that. This is I's goodwill. It has nothing to do with hospitality. Zhong Yejing smiled and stuffed the storage pouch into Fei Ming's hands. Fei Ming accepted it after a slight decline. Then, he smiled and said, Fellow Taoist Zhong, please wait a moment. Family head and Senior Qin have talked for a long time. I'm sure your mouth is dry. This humble Taoist will go serve tea and see if the two seniors have time. Zhong Yejing was overjoyed. She cupped her hands and said, Thank you, fellow Taoist Fei. Fei Ming and Fei Yulian stood up and looked coldly at Zhong Yedong, who was still standing there. They turned around and left the guest hall. After the two left, Zhong Yejing sighed and said, Brother Dong, sit down. People have to lower their heads when they're under someone else's roof. The two elders will be here soon. Don't say anything else. Zhong Yedong didn't say anything and sat silently on the chair. Another hour passed by, and two divine senses suddenly swept in from outside the guest hall, locking onto Zhong Yedong and Zhong Yejing in an instant. The divine senses were very powerful, and Zhong Yedong and Zhong Yejing immediately understood that two Golden Core Realm seniors had come out. They didn't dare to be negligent. They immediately stood up from their chairs and walked quickly to greet them. Sure enough, as soon as the two of them took 2 steps, 2 cultivators in fiery red Taoist robes fluttered in. The first was a thin and tall old man with a goatee, small eyes, and a face full of wrinkles. He was Fei Xiqing, the family head of the Fei family. Behind him was a middle-aged man with bright eyes, a red face, and a full beard. He was Qin Kai, the family head of the Qin family. Junior greets Senior Fei and Senior Qin. Zhong Yejing and Zhong Yejing hurriedly stopped and bowed. And Fei Xiqing waved her sleeves in response. Qin Kai ignored her and followed Fei Xiqing to take a seat at the head of the table. Fellow Taoist Fei! As soon as Qin Kai sat down, he immediately smiled and said, The artifact refining method fellow Taoist spoke of is truly a unique one. I really hadn't thought of it before. If this method is successful, our 2-sex artifact refining efficiency will increase by 40%. Isn't this all thanks to fellow Taoist Qin? If fellow Taoist Qin didn't show me the Qin family's refining method, I wouldn't have been able to comprehend such an uncommon method. Ha! It's all thanks to fellow Taoist Fei. I only get 30% of the credit. Qin Kai laughed and said, It seems that the Fei family and the Qin family will be closer in the future. That's right. In the southern part of Ming country, only our 2 families can refine. If we cooperate, we will both benefit. If we don't, we will both suffer. Fei Xiqing also smiled. Zhong Yejing and Zhong Yedong still stood there respectfully, not daring to take a seat. They could only listen to the two chatting, not daring to interrupt at all. As for Zhong Yedong, his eyes were staring at the ground. No one knew what he was thinking. After a long while, Fei Xiqing seemed to be thirsty. She looked up and said, Why hasn't the boy who serves tea come yet? When she looked up, she saw Zhong Yejing and Zhong Yedong. Therefore, Fei Xiqing asked faintly, What happened in the Zhong family? Why did Zhong Tianyao, who has always looked down on our refining family, send the two of you here? Zhong Yejing didn't dare to neglect Fei Xiqing's question. She hurried forward and bowed respectfully. Junior Zhong Yejing of the Zhong family of Yun City greets Senior Fei. What's the matter? Fei Xiqing said faintly, but her eyes were fixed on Qin Kai. Senior, please know that our Zhong family has encountered an extremely difficult matter. Zhong Yejing told them about the matter that Zhong Tianyao had instructed her to do. Then she took off the storage pouch from her waist and handed it over. She smiled and said, This is a token of my appreciation for inviting the two seniors over. I hope that the other seniors will kindly accept it. -8. Chapter 21:16. A disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect? Fei Xiqing didn't look at the storage bag. She frowned and shook her head. Although the Imperial Thunder Sect isn't in the country of Xi, it's still one of the biggest sects in the country of Xi. It's far from being comparable to the cultivation families in Ming country. Your Zhong family has provoked such a disaster, yet you still want us to get involved. I haven't lost my mind yet. How can I get involved in this matter? Don't you think so, fellow Taoist Qin? Qin Kai became even colder and snappily said, Fei Xiqing, I came to your Mount Feihe to exchange my refining experience. If the disciples of the Zhong family want to find me, they naturally have to go to Fan City. How can they find me here? When you were talking just now, I was thinking about the technique just now and didn't hear a single word. Fellow Taoist Fei, please continue. Just pretend I'm not here. Zhong Yejing, did you see that? Fei Xiqing laughed. It's not that I don't want to help the Zhong family, but I don't have the ability. Besides, how can an early Foundation establishment cultivator of the Imperial Thunder Sect be old Devil Zhong's opponent? In my opinion, that old Devil Zhong has some ulterior motives. He wants to use this to trick us into entering your Zhong family's Zhongling Mountain village. How can I be fooled? Senior Fei, what do you mean by that? Zhong Yedong couldn't help but shout. What happened in my Zhongling Mountain village is the truth. This junior saw it with his own eyes. Xiaohua's flying speed is extremely fast, like a ghost, and his methods are extremely ruthless. Dozens of people in my Zhongling Mountain village have already died. If not for this, why would we come here to beg the two seniors? The Zhong family, Qin family, and Fei family are all cultivation families in Ming country. If the Imperial Thunder Sect bullies my Zhong family, they might bully the Qin family and Fei family in the future. The attitude of the two seniors really makes this junior disappointed. If this matter is spread out, who knows how the nearby cultivation families will deal with the two seniors? Moreover, the two seniors should first take a look at my Zhong family's intentions. If you are not satisfied... Without waiting for Zhong Yedong to finish, Fei Xiqing swung her sleeve and slapped Zhong Yedong's face. Fei Xiqing's face was somewhat gloomy as she scolded. Ignorant child, what do you think we are? You actually dare to bargain in front of this old man? Do you think you are Zhong Tianyao? Even Zhong Tianyao wouldn't dare to be so blatant. That's right. Qin Kai said indifferently. The two of us won't go, so what? Even if your Zhong clan spreads this news, who will be the one losing face? If he couldn't even catch a Foundation establishment cultivator, how could Zhong Tianyao still have the face to live in Ming country? Even if someone is making things up about me, I'll send that person to your Zhongling villa. I'd like to see who dares to cause trouble for the Imperial Lightning Sect. Seniors, Zhong Yejing hurriedly said. That's not what I meant. Where are all the disciples in charge of receiving guests? Fellow Taoist Fei, You need to properly educate the disciples of Mount Feiha. Qin Kai sneered. It's hard for this old man to even drink spirit tea. With that, Qin Kai got up and walked outside. Ha, fellow Taoist Qin, don't worry. This old man has a new spirit wine here. I'm afraid you haven't tasted it before. Why don't you give it a try? Fei Xiqing also stood up and said with a smile. Oh, what spirit wine? Old Fei, you actually have a spirit wine that this old man doesn't know about? Qin Kai's eyes lit up, but his voice was already far away. Brother Dong. Zhong Yejing looked at Zhong Yedong, whose face was green and red, and stamped her feet, not knowing what to say. Now, what should we do? Zhong Yedong, seeing that he had messed up the matter, was somewhat at a loss. I didn't mean to say that, but when the words came out of my mouth, I just blurted it out. Zhong Yejing sighed. She really didn't understand why the patriarch wanted Zhong Yedong to come with her. Wouldn't any other person be stronger than him? Was it just because the two people's names were similar? Let's go, what else can we do? We can't just let the Fei clan's disciples kick us out. Zhong Yejing snappily got up. They dare! Zhong Yedong stiffened his neck and said. Why wouldn't they dare? Zhong Yejing said. Didn't you see that Xiaohua, who treated my Zhongling villa as an uninhabited place? If you have the ability, capture Xiaohua. I will go back and squat at the mountain gate. Let's see how powerful that Xiaohua is, Zhong Yedong said excitedly. Sure enough, when Zhong Yejing and Zhong Yedong left the guest hall, no Fei clan's disciples came to greet them. Even when they flew away from Feiha Mountain, only the disciples on duty looked at them from afar. When Zhong Yejing and Zhong Yedong returned to Zhongling Villa, they carefully reported the ins and outs of the matter to Zhong Tianyao, who was guarding the ancestral hall. Unexpectedly, Zhong Tianyao didn't scold Zhong Yedong, but nodded casually and said, You have worked hard. You have rested for a few days, but I'm afraid you will have to go again. Ah? Zhong Yejing was slightly taken aback, but she didn't dare to ask any questions. She bowed respectfully and left. Zhong Yedong really did as he said. He flew to the entrance of the villa, found a place, and sat down cross-legged, waiting for Xiaohua. Third brother, what do you think? After Zhong Yejing and Zhong Yedong left, Zhong Tianyao asked faintly. Fei Xiqing and Qin Kai, those two old ghosts. Are there any problems? After listening to Zhong Tianyao question, Zhong Peiyuan was very hesitant. His eyes flickered slightly, and he didn't answer for a long time. What? Third brother, you have been traveling outside for decades, searching for materials for our Zhong clan's ancestral artifact. You have come into contact with many cultivators. Don't tell me you don't have any thoughts? Zhong Tianyao said unhappily. Sigh, I'll let the clan head know. Zhong Peiyuan smiled bitterly. If the boy hadn't left Zhongling Villa, Yun City, or even Ming Country, the boy would have immediately said his thoughts. But after seeing all kinds of people, experiencing all kinds of scams, and experiencing all kinds of people's hearts, the boy didn't dare to say anything. The most unpredictable thing in this world is not the cultivation method, the method of making talismans, or the method of refining pills, but the human heart. The human heart is the most complicated thing in the world. The boy doesn't know what the heavenly Tao is, but in the boy's opinion, the human heart is as deep as the heavenly Tao. Zhong Tianyao nodded and said with satisfaction. What you said is very good. Actually, even I can't judge whether Qin Kai and Fei Xiqing have any bad intentions. Zhong Peifu, who was beside him, said curiously. Clan head, the boy thought that it would be enough to send Jing'er alone. He even thought that Jing'er and Dong'er could find one person each. But the clan head insisted that Jing'er and Dong'er should go together and invite people one by one. I remember that the clan head once said that Dong'er's temper is irritable. He wanted to test the Fei clan and Qin clan's attitude to see if they had anything to do with this matter. If they even tolerate Dong'er's temper, then they must have some ulterior motives. We can't let others take advantage of us for nothing. But now Dong'er and Jing'er have been chased out. Doesn't this mean that these two clans have no ulterior motives towards our Zhong clan? They are afraid that the clan head will plot against them. Haha, so that's what I was thinking. Zhong Tianyao stroked his beard and said with a smile. But think about it again. The Qin clan and Fei clan don't have any particularly close relationship with our Zhong clan. If they have something to ask of our Zhong clan, then they will definitely have a way to deal with my plans. If they come to our Zhong clan, wouldn't that be too abnormal? Even if it's you, you won't come at once, right? This? Zhong Peifu was dumbfounded. He shook his head and said, If the clan head says so, then we really can't judge. We can only wait for Xiao Hua to do whatever he wants, or we can give him the thing that he wants. How can we give it to him? Even if that thing is useless to us, we definitely can't give it to him. Zhong Peiyuan snorted coldly. If we give it to him, then we are giving our Zhong clan's face to him, allowing him to trample on it as he pleases. Besides, how should we calculate the lives of these dozens of Zhong clan disciples? But if we don't give it to him, we can't capture him, and we can't ask the other two golden core cultivators to help the clan head. What should we do then? Zhong Peifu asked back. Zhong Peiyuan let out a long sigh. He was also speechless. Xiao Hua's flying speed was indeed formidable. The entire Zhongling mountain villa was so big. Although there were some formations protecting it, it was different from the mountain-protecting formation of the cultivation sections. Xiao Hua could easily break through it as if there was nothing there. Zhong Tianyao, a golden core cultivator, couldn't catch him at all. Only 3 golden core cultivators formed a triangle and trapped Xiao Hua, then they could succeed. Actually, it's still a little strange. Zhong Tianyao didn't make any judgment and suddenly said, Qin Kai, that old ghost, usually stays in Fan City and doesn't come out. Why did he suddenly go to Mount Feihe during this period of time? From what Jing'er said, it seems that he's working together with Fei Xiqing to refine some kind of magic tool. Zhong Peiyuan reminded. Yes, that's very strange. Zhong Tianyao nodded. The two clans are both refining tools, and they're usually competing with each other. Small grudges constantly exist, and the two of them don't have any good expressions when they meet. Now that they're together, that Fei Xiqing even gave Qin Kai some spiritual wine. Could it be that Mount Feihe has some use for Qin Kai? Zhong Peiyuan probed. Or maybe, the two clans obtained some kind of secret tool refining technique together? Zhong Peifu also reminded. A smile appeared on Zhong Tianyao's face. He pointed with his hand and said, That's right. Since the two clans are busy refining tools, I'm afraid they don't have the time to scheme against my Zhong clan. This old man can also invite the two clans without worry. But if the two of them have some kind of scheme, they'll definitely be together. Zhong Peiyuan was still frowning. They're obviously together. It's too strange. Ha ha ha, what's real is fake, and what's fake is real. Zhong Tianyao laughed. I'm afraid it's because of this that I believe that the two of them definitely don't have any designs on my Zhongling villa. But Zhong Peiyuan was still worried. My Zhong clan has been hiding for many years. If you like this work, you're welcome to vote for it at Qidian. Com. -8. Chapter 21:17. Sai, that thing is the foundation of our Zhong family's future in Ming country. Naturally, we have to protect it well and not let others get it. I hope Patriarch can forgive me. If it wasn't for the boy's negligence, Xiao Hua definitely wouldn't have found it. Zhong Peifu said somewhat dejectedly. It's fine. Xiao Hua only knows that it's a place for refining equipment, but he doesn't know what's inside. Zhong Tianyao waved his hand and said, Moreover, he's just a cultivator from Shi country. If we capture him, we'll kill him without waiting for him to speak. Even if the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples find him, can they still deny the crime of killing dozens of our Zhong family's low-level disciples? Then do we still need Jing'er to go to Mount Feihe? Zhong Peiyuan asked. Zhong Tianyao shook his head and said, Not for the time being. Qin Kai and Fei Xiqing are refining equipment, so they don't have the mind to care about anything else. Didn't you hear what Jing'er said? He didn't even take the storage bag. He didn't plan to come at all. Otherwise, the things inside would be enough for him to be tempted. Boy understands. Zhong Peiyuan and Zhong Peifu nodded. Hurry up and patrol during this period of time. Don't add any more lives, Zhong Tianyao ordered. Yes. After the two of them left, Zhong Tianyao frowned again. He sat on the chair and sank into deep thought. Unknowingly, dozens of days passed. It was another moonless night. The entire Zhongling villa fell into an extremely tense atmosphere. Because everyone knew that the last 2 times Xiaohua entered Zhongling villa to kill people, it was at this time. If there were no accidents, he would come again tonight. Even Zhong Yedong, who was sitting at the entrance of the villa, had cold sweat in his palms. The night wind was bleak, and the sound of cicadas was terrifying. However, Xiaohua, who everyone was waiting for, was sitting cross-legged under a willow tree. In front of him, there was a person kneeling. It was Zhong Haoren. Zhong Haoren, have you decided? You won't change it? Xiaohua said indifferently. Without any hesitation, Zhong Haoren nodded and said, That's right. Senior, you've already told me about it dozens of days ago. Over the past few days, I've already thought it through. Although I don't know why you're doing this to me, I'm willing to take this risk for Senior's sister to continue cultivating. AI, it's not that I want to make things difficult for you. It's just that this heavenly mending pill is too strange. Someone has to pay the price for it. This is the rule of using the heavenly mending pill. Xiaohua sighed. Senior Xiao, you don't have to feel troubled. Zhong Haoren comforted. Junior knows that such a heaven-defying thing is not easy to deal with. Junior will not let Senior take any more risks. Junior has already thought of all the possible disasters when Junior was praying. And you've been kneeling and praying on the mountain peak these past few days. This Xiao has also seen it clearly, Xiaohua said with a smile. For you to kneel and pray to this Xiao every day, this Xiao will also do his best. In that case, I beseech Senior Xiao to take action. Zhong Haoren knelt down once again. All right. Xiaohua flicked his large sleeve, and Zhong Haoren's entire body was unable to move, as if he was frozen. Then, he heard Xiaohua's heavenly voice in his ears. Zhong Haoren, from now on, you can't speak, and you can't transmit your voice. This is the price you have to pay for using the heavenly mending pill. Ah? Zhong Haoren had already thought about it for several dozen days, but he had never thought that the price would actually be like this. However, when he thought about how he could still cultivate, still build his foundation, and still stay by Zhong Xiuhan's side without breaking his limbs, so what if he could not speak? Zhong Haoren wanted to nod his head, but his entire body did not have the slightest bit of strength, nor the slightest bit of magic power. After a moment, Zhong Haoren did not see any movement from Xiaohua. Zhong Haoren's magic power recovered, and he could also move his body. Zhong Haoren hurriedly said, Senior Xiao, He originally wanted to say that he was willing, but when he opened his mouth, not a single word came out. A burst of wuyaya sounds came and entered Zhong Haoren's ears. This is my voice? Zhong Haoren thought in his heart. However, his expectation and joy hid his disappointment. Because at this moment, Xiaohua clapped his hand and took out a slightly red medicinal pill. Is this the heaven-mending pill? Zhong Haoren took the heaven-mending pill and looked at the medicinal pill that did not have any medicinal fragrance and did not have any special phenomenon. He was bewildered but still spoke out of habit. Then, he pointed his finger at the medicinal pill, and a puzzled look appeared in his eyes. Don't worry, you can give this medicinal pill to Zhong Xiuhan now, Xiaohua said with a smile. Zhong Haoren put the heaven-mending pill into a jade bottle, cowed out again, and quickly entered the orchid of the valley courtyard. Zhong Haoren, I hope you have good luck. Xiaohua raised his head to look at the sky, and sighed. Today is the day this young master will go and harass Zhongling Mountain Villa again, but for you, this young master will stay. If something happens to Zhong Xiuhan, this young master's reputation as the heaven-mending pill will be ruined, right? Then, Xiaohua flew up, and chased after Zhong Haoren like a gust of wind. Pung 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 pung. Zhong Haoren walked to the front of Zhong Xiuhan's hut, and raised his hand to knock on the window. In the past 10 days, because of Xiao Hua's guarantee and Zhong Haoren's comfort, Zhong Xiuhan's mood had been relaxed, and she could sleep normally at night. Zhong Haoren's arrival did not attract her attention. "Who is it?" Zhong Xiuhan woke up, and asked curiously. "Is it Haoren?" However, the familiar simple and honest voice did not ring out, and it was still the sound of knocking on the window. "Who is it?" Zhong Xiuhan shouted vigilantly. At this moment the knocking stopped. "Damn Haoren, what kind of joke are you playing with me?" Zhong Xiuhan opened the door slightly, and saw Zhong Haoren standing in front of the window with a smile on his face. She immediately laughed and scolded. "I already agreed, and you still didn't say anything? Do you want to die?" Zhong Haoren did not answer, and clapped his hand, took out the jade bottle, and handed it to Zhong Xiuhan. "This is the heaven-mending pill?" Zhong Xiuhan was stunned, and immediately became overjoyed. She snatched the jade bottle, removed the cork, and poured out the heaven-mending pill. "Is this the heaven-mending pill?" Zhong Xiuhan looked at the ugly pill, and somewhat doubtfully looked at Zhong Haoren. Zhong Haoren did not speak, and raised a finger to his lips, and made a gesture of breathing, indicating for Zhong Xiuhan to speak softly. "This pill is so strange, there is no medicinal fragrance at all. Senior Xiao is not mistaken, right?" Zhong Xiuhan did not seem to notice Zhong Haoren's strangeness, and muttered in a low voice. "Don't you think so?" Zhong Haoren's face revealed a smile, and he nodded slightly, as if he had a card up his sleeve, but he still did not speak. "What? Damn Haoren, why are you so strange today? Why are you not saying a word?" Zhong Xiuhan finally noticed Zhong Haoren's silence, and asked in a low voice. "In the past, it was always you who spoke, and I listened. Why are you not saying a word today? Could it be that you are mute?" -8. Chapter 21:18. Zhong Haoren still didn't speak. He shook his head slightly, looked left and right, then put his index finger to his mouth, indicating for her not to make a sound. Then, he pointed at the chaotic heavenly pill in Zhong Yuehan's hand and pointed at her mouth, indicating for her to take it as soon as possible. Xiao Hua in the distance understood that Zhong Haoren wanted Zhong Yuehan to take the chaotic heavenly pill before she noticed his abnormality, so that Zhong Yuehan wouldn't refuse to take the chaotic heavenly pill because of him. "Maybe my way of thinking is a bit too cruel." A trace of regret formed in Xiao Hua's heart, but then, Xiao Hua smiled and said, "How can one achieve a rainbow without experiencing wind and rain? Zhong Haoren, if this delays you, this Xiao will bear all the consequences. It can also be considered as you bowing down to this Xiao and letting this Xiao understand the price of some things." On the other side, Zhong Yuehan was indeed focused on the chaotic heavenly pill as Zhong Haoren expected. She had been looking forward to this item for who knows how many days. Seeing that she was about to resume her cultivation, how could she pay attention to anything else? "Good. I'll take it now." Zhong Yuehan smiled until her eyes became 2 crescent moons. Zhong Haoren didn't speak and nodded slightly. "Haoren, you have to protect me," Zhong Yuehan said tenderly with a rare look of attachment. Zhong Haoren didn't speak and nodded slightly. "Then I'll take it?" Zhong Yuehan smiled. Zhong Haoren didn't speak and nodded slightly. Seeing that Zhong Haoren still didn't speak, Zhong Yuehan felt a bit strange. Zhong Haoren was a bit anxious at this time. He pretended to look to the side and pointed at the pill. "And?" Zhong Yuehan seemed to understand something and didn't ask any more. She walked to the side of the hut and sat cross-legged, then swallowed the chaotic heavenly pill in one gulp. When the chaotic heavenly pill entered her stomach, it immediately turned into a hot flow and rushed into Zhong Yuehan's meridians. The broken meridians were gradually repaired as if they had met with sweet dew. Zhong Yuehan hurriedly used the heart technique that she hadn't used for a long time and moved the warm flow into her meridians bit by bit. Zhong Haoren heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Zhong Yuehan had taken the pill and a white mist had appeared on top of her head. He extended his hand to wipe away the layer of sweat on his forehead. It was just as Xiaohua had expected. He was really afraid that Zhong Yuan would not take the heaven-mending pill because of the price he had to pay. Unlike the silence in the Orchid of the Bells courtyard, several screams rang out in succession within the Zhongling Mountain Villa. Several batches of disciples on duty, led by Zhong Yu, Zhong Yejing, and the others, quickly rushed to several places. The entire Zhongling Mountain Villa immediately descended into chaos. However, what was different from the previous 2 times was that this time, there was no Xiaohua's arrogant voice, nor was there any flying shadow. Eh? What method did Xiaohua use? Zhong Tianyou's divine sense swept across the entire Zhongling Mountain Villa, but he actually didn't see Xiaohua's figure, causing him to be even more shocked. Not only was this bastard able to avoid this old man's capture, he was even able to avoid this old man's divine sense. It seems that he intentionally revealed himself the previous 2 times. What should we do? Right at this moment, someone shouted at the entrance of Zhongling Villa. Where do you think you're going? It was actually the sound of Zhong Yedong. Ah? It's Dong'er! When Zhong Tianyao and the others heard this, their figures hurriedly flew up and flew towards the entrance of Zhongling Mountain Villa. However, Zhong Yedong wasn't at the entrance of the villa. Zhong Tianyou's divine sense chased after him, and he saw Zhong Yedong's figure rapidly chasing towards the west. However, there was nothing in front of Zhong Yedong that his divine sense could see at all. Just as Zhong Tianyao was about to fly over, Zhong Yedong stopped, scratched his head and looked around, and then scratched his head in confusion. Zhong Tianyao knew that Zhong Yedong had already lost Xiaohua. Zhong Tianyao released his divine sense and carefully searched Zhong Yedong's surroundings again. There was nothing unusual, so he retracted his divine sense. At this moment, Zhong Yedong also flew back. Greetings, Patriarch! Zhong Yedong saw Zhong Tianyao and bowed respectfully. And you saw Xiaohua? Zhong Tianyao asked. Why didn't he attack you? Boy, I didn't see him either. Zhong Yedong shook his head and said, Boy only saw a black shadow that was a foot-long flash in front of Boy, and Boy immediately chased after it. That black shadow flew extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye, it was far away. Boy could still see it earlier, but in just a moment, that black shadow flew away. He couldn't find it anymore. Xiaohua is actually good at hiding. Zhong Tianyao was even more shocked. He flies extremely fast and can hide, even this old man. I'm afraid I can't catch him. But from what Boy saw, Zhong Yedong said anxiously, that black shadow doesn't seem to be a human shape. I'm afraid it's not Xiaohua, right? Dong'er, can you see clearly? Zhong Peiyuan asked. Zhong Yedong shook his head. Boy can't see clearly, so I can't be sure. Sigh, Dong'er, since you can't see clearly, don't talk nonsense. You're a foundation establishment cultivator, which is the same as Xiaohua's cultivation. Even if you're slightly weaker, Xiaohua doesn't dare to stay, afraid that your entanglement will attract Patriarch. His flying technique is extremely fast, and he can hide. How can you see his true face? Zhong Peiyuan sighed. But Zhong Yedong still wanted to say something, but he saw Zhong Yu and the others flying over from the villa. Zhong Tianyao no longer paid attention to Zhong Yedong, turned his head and said, How are the casualties? Zhong Yu's expression was extremely ugly, and said in a low voice, This subordinate roughly looked, there are already more than 50 people in the few places where there were only screams. There are still other places that haven't been checked, but according to Xiaohua's vicious methods, there must be places where they were killed before they could even make a sound. He's really crazy, really inhumane. Zhong Peiyuan said angrily. Isn't it just because of something? This bastard actually. Sigh, old third. Zhong Peifu sighed and said, That thing must be extremely useful to him. If he obtains it, his abijna will definitely increase greatly. Who knows, he might even be able to reach golden core and nascent soul. With such a temptation, what can he not do? Didn't you see that day? Huguan foam? If we don't give it to him, He'll really attack the family head and all of us. Humph, wasn't Xiaohua the other day different? If it weren't for the fact that his cultivation base isn't high enough, he would have made a move long ago, right? Zhong Peiyuan sneered. Zhong Tianyao gritted his teeth, feeling truly powerless in his heart. It seemed that ever since he cultivated to golden core, he had never been so passive. Only now did he know that compared to a cultivation sect, he was truly aggrieved as the family head of a cultivation aristocratic family. This also made him even more determined to rely on the newly discovered refining method to bring the Zhong family step by step onto the path of a cultivation sect. Take a look at the number of casualties first. Zhong Tianyao waved his hand, then turned his head and said to Zhong Peiyuan and Zhong Peifu, "The two of you, come over here and discuss how to invite Qin Kai and Fei Xiqing." Zhongling Mountain Villa gradually calmed down, but Zhong Xiuhan of the Lily of the Valley courtyard was like an ant in a steamer. The medicinal power of that heavenly mending pill was so strong that it far exceeded Zhong Xiuhan's expectations. It actually repaired her meridians, which she thought would take several days to repair, in just 6 hours. Moreover, while Zhong Xiuhan was in ecstasy, the remaining medicinal power still remained. Zhong Xiuhan didn't stop at all, immediately activating her mental cultivation method to refine the remaining medicinal power. Just after activating her mental cultivation method for a great cycle, Zhong Xiuhan suddenly discovered that there were signs of condensation in her true qi. She was finally going to build her foundation again. But at this time, Zhong Xiuhan's mentality was like once bitten by a snake, 3 years afraid of ropes. Worried about her gains and losses, she didn't dare to activate her mental cultivation method again. "Quick, continue cultivating!" Xiaohua's indifferent voice sounded. "Yes." Seeing Xiaohua, a foundation-building cultivator, by her side, Zhong Xiuhan's heart was greatly relieved. Her heart calmed down, and the speed of condensation in her true qi became even faster. "Quickly take the foundation-building pill?" Xiaohua slightly frowned. At this time, Zhong Xiuhan bitterly smiled and said, "Senior Xiao, Junior's 2 foundation-building pills have already been used up. Right now, I don't have any foundation-building pills on me." "Oh?" Xiaohua's eyebrows twitched. His mind turned again, and he looked at Zhong Haoren. Zhong Haoren didn't hesitate at all. He clapped his hands, and the 2 foundation-building pills were placed in front of Zhong Xiuhan. "Haoren, you are so good!" Zhong Xiuhan affectionately looked at Zhong Haoren again. "No need to be so affectionate," Xiaohua whispered. "Zhong Xiuhan, come with me. This place is not suitable for building your foundation." After saying that, Xiaohua unceremoniously lifted his hand and flew out with Zhong Xiuhan like the wind. He directly flew towards the mountain peak that Zhong Haoren was praying to the heavens. Seeing Xiaohua take action, Zhong Haoren naturally felt relieved. He activated the flying talisman tail and flew towards the mountain peak with Xiaohua. But Xiaohua's speed was so fast that in the blink of an eye, Zhong Haoren was left far behind. When Zhong Haoren flew to the peak of the mountain, he saw that Zhong Xiuhan was sitting on the stone slab that he usually knelt on. She had already reached the end of building her foundation. That's right, she actually built her foundation on the stone slab that Zhong Haoren usually knelt on. This was probably done by Xiaohua on purpose. Sensing that Zhong Xiuhan's faint pressure of building her foundation was slowly withdrawing, Zhong Haoren's eyes were moist. He knew in his heart that this was Zhong Xiuhan's lifelong pursuit. It was also because of her strong and competitive nature that she failed to build her foundation last time. And this time, because of Xiaohua's help, she succeeded in building her foundation. "Where is Senior Xiao?" Zhong Haoren immediately looked around, but there was no trace of Xiaohua at the peak of the mountain. "Haoren!" Zhong Xiuhan withdrew her pressure. Her face was red from excitement, and her eyes couldn't hide her pride. Seeing that Zhong Haoren had arrived at the peak of the mountain, she jumped in front of Zhong Haoren and threw herself into his arms. She smiled and said, "You are so good. If it wasn't for you, how could I find Senior Xiao? If it wasn't for you, how could I build my foundation? This heaven-mending pill really lives up to its name." Not only can it repair my meridians, it can also help me build my foundation. Zhong Xiuhan fell into Zhong Haoren's arms and breathed in Zhong Haoren's scent. She was somewhat intoxicated as she spoke. However, after talking to herself for a long time, she didn't hear Zhong Haoren's response. She unconsciously raised her head, and her scarlet lips curled up. She scolded. I built my foundation, aren't you happy? Is it because my cultivation is higher than yours that you don't want to talk? -8. Chapter 21:19. Zhong Haoren had an indescribable feeling in his heart. It was neither sadness nor regret. He just smiled, pointed to his mouth, and opened his mouth to say a few words. Ah? You! Zhong Xiuhan was shocked and hurriedly broke free from Zhong Xiuhan's arms and shouted. Damn Haoren, don't scare me! You really can't speak? Quick, tell me what's going on! Immediately, Zhong Xiuhan woke up and turned to look for Xiaohua. Senior Xiao! Zhong Haoren pulled Zhong Xiuhan's sleeve and shook his head slightly. Haoren, tell me, what's going on? Zhong Xiuhan was so anxious that she was about to cry. Zhong Haoren did not look depressed. He patted his hand and took out a small jade slip from his storage bag. He had some divine sense now, but it was very weak. He could only write a few words. However, the matter was very simple. He could explain it in a few words. Ah? Haoren, you sacrificed so much for me! Zhong Xiuhan looked at the jade slip and the tears on her face fell. She hugged Zhong Haoren again and kissed his lips fiercely. Zhong Haoren was so happy that he almost fainted. He could not even stand steadily. After a long while, Zhong Xiuhan suddenly woke up and said anxiously, Yes, Haoren, since it's Senior Zhao's idea, let's go and beg Senior Xiao, asked him. Zhong Haoren shook his head slightly. Alas! Zhong Xiuhan was also disappointed and said in a low voice, This matter. Senior Xiao wants us to swear that we can't leak it out. What is he planning to do? Zhong Haoren did not answer. Instead, he pointed to Zhong Xiuhan's mouth and signaled her to swear. Zhong Xiuhan nodded and swore very meekly. Only then did Zhong Haoren smile. However, my meridians have been repaired, and I have built my foundation. Naturally, I have to return to Zhongling Mountain Village. If others ask, I have to give an explanation. Zhong Xiuhan thought for a moment and said, I can only say that I met a senior. I don't know his name, and he gave me the heaven-mending pill. Zhong Haoren nodded. Xiaohua did not say anything. Casually making up a cultivator was in line with Xiaohua's idea. But Haoren, what about you, what should I say? Zhong Xiuhan was somewhat embarrassed. Zhong Haoren smiled as he took the jade slip and wrote a few words. Well, that's the only way. Zhong Yuhan nodded. Qigong deviation is the best explanation. Let's go, Haoren. Let's hurry back to Zhongling Mountain Villa. Zhong Yuhan smiled and said, I've just built my foundation, so I still need to stabilize my realm. Only when I return to the manor can I find senior sister and senior brother to give me some pointers. Then, she held Zhong Haoren's hand and kissed his cheek sweetly. Don't worry, Haoren, I will never forget you. Zhong Haoren nodded happily, and the two of them activated their flying talismans and flew toward the Zhongling Mountain Villa. After the two of them left, Xiaohua's figure appeared on the top of the mountain. He looked at the stone slab that Zhong Haoren was kneeling on, which was also the stone slab for Zhong Yuhan to build her foundation. His face showed a thoughtful expression. It's strange. Why would I suddenly have the idea of testing Zhong Yuhan? Could it be that it was also on a whim? However, it's hard to figure out what method to use. Fortunately, there's this acupoint sealing technique. I used an extremely weak amount of earth crystal yao milk on the mute acupoint. The restriction technique is also hidden. Even Zhong Tianyao might not be able to discover it, right? Zhong Haoren is just an aura refining disciple. How could Zhong Tianyao make a move? Zhong Haoren, this earth crystal yao milk is the same as the clear flower pill in my meridians back then. It's a test, but it's also a chance. I will not let down your sincere heart. Then, Xiaohua used the earth escape technique and entered the cave where Shui Shui cultivated. While refining pills, he also consumed pills and continued to cultivate. Zhong Yuehan and Zhong Haoren returned to Zhongling Mountain Villa. When they saw the desolate state of the villa and the terrifying aura, they couldn't help but be shocked. They stopped a disciple and asked, and the two of them turned pale with fright. What they didn't expect was that the culprit who turned Zhongling Mountain Villa into such a state and poisoned hundreds of people in Zhongling Mountain Villa was their benefactor, Xiaohua. How? How is this possible? Zhong Yuehan whispered. Last night, wasn't he at Orchid of the Valley courtyard? It's impossible for him to come to Zhongling Mountain Villa. But then, Zhong Yuehan hesitated again. But his cultivation level is very high, and his flying speed is also very fast. When I took the heavenly pill, he could have flown to Zhongling Mountain Villa. However, Zhong Haoren's face was full of determination. He absolutely didn't believe that Xiaohua, who took out the heavenly pill so easily, could actually poison hundreds of people to death. Unfortunately, he couldn't speak and couldn't defend Xiaohua. And, even if he could speak, who would listen? An aura-refining disciple who disappeared from Zhongling Mountain Villa for dozens of days and no one cared about him, he really was a small person with little power. Just then, a few early-stage Foundation establishment senior brothers walked over. The one in the front was a rather scholarly disciple with delicate features. When he saw Zhong Yuehan, he couldn't help but be stunned. He said in surprise, Ah? Yuehan, you've also built your foundation? Didn't your meridians break and go to Orchid of the Valley courtyard to recuperate? I'll let senior brother Qingpa know. Zhong Yuehan smiled like a flower. I had a fortuitous encounter and met a strange person. Not only did he give me a pill to connect my meridians, but he also helped me build my foundation. Oh, this is really a joyous occasion for my Zhongling Mountain Villa. Zhong Qingpa clapped his hands and said, My Zhong clan has been sobbing for the past dozens of days. It's rare for there to be any good news. However, junior sister Yuehan, your foundation establishment realm seems to be unstable. You still need to cultivate carefully. It can't be delayed. Yes, I also know that. Didn't I hurry back to the villa and ask senior brothers for guidance? Zhong Yuehan smiled apologetically. Oh, Zhong Haoren? Another Foundation establishment disciple looked at Zhong Haoren and said, Where have you been these days? Why didn't I see you? Zhong Haoren's face showed embarrassment. He bowed and pointed at his mouth, shaking his head slightly. What's going on? The disciple was at a loss. Junior brother Zhong was so diligent in cultivating that he went mad. His mouth can't speak for the time being. Zhong Yuehan explained in a low voice. Oh, I see. Zhong Qingpa nodded and said, Cultivation is something that can't be achieved without taking small steps. You can't be impatient. Haoren, you have to take this as a warning in the future. Zhong Haoren nodded respectfully. Oh, junior sister Yuehan, now that you're also in the Foundation establishment realm, you don't have to call Zhong Haoren junior brother anymore. Just call him martial nephew. Zhong Qingpa smiled and said, When you stabilize your realm, you still have to leave your natal spirit tablet in the ancestral hall. This is an honor that only the Zhong clan's Foundation establishment disciples can have. Yes, I understand. Zhong Yuehan looked at Zhong Haoren apologetically and said in a low voice, If you like this work, you're welcome to vote for it at Qidian. Com. -8. Chapter 21:20. Let's go and report the good news to Granduncle, Zhong Qingpa said with a smile. Granduncle and the others will definitely be happy that Zhong family has a disciple who has reached the Foundation building realm at such a critical time. Zhong Haoren silently watched Zhong Xiuhan leave. It was impossible for him not to have any thoughts in his heart. However, Zhong Haoren felt at peace because he believed that Zhong Xiuhan was just helpless. Once she stabilized her realm, she would definitely come to find him. Thus, Zhong Haoren turned around and went back to his room. Zhong Haoren was a direct disciple of the Zhong family. Unlike the low-level disciples in the medicinal garden, he had his own place to cultivate. This place could be considered safe. The previous 2 attacks that killed hundreds of people didn't involve this place. Therefore, no one cared too much about Zhong Haoren going out for dozens of days. However, the 2 deaths now involved most of the Zhongling mountain village. The place where the aura-refining disciples cultivated began to become restless. All kinds of terrifying and uneasy auras filled the air. The aura-refining disciples were all in danger, afraid that they would lose their lives if they were careless. If it were any other time, Zhong Haoren's so-called loss of speech caused by qi deviation would definitely be comforted by his fellow disciples. There would even be more enthusiastic senior sisters who would look for some solutions. But at this time, Zhong Haoren was first greeted with indifference, then astonishment, and finally, ridicule. Hee Haoren, I really didn't expect this. First there was Zhong Xiuhan, and now there's you. Both of you cultivated desperately for the sake of building your foundation, but now your cultivation hasn't improved at all. That one became a cripple, and you became a mute. How sad! Humph, what do you know? I just got the news from the master that Zhong Xiuhan has now turned from bad to good. Not only has her meridians been repaired, but she has also built her foundation. She's now our martial aunt. She's already built her foundation, so why would she go back to the Zhongling mountain village? Isn't it good to hide in the orchid of the valley courtyard? At least Xiaohua didn't appear there. Oh right, Zhong Haoren, you seem to have a good relationship with Zhong Xiuhan. You. Could it be that you were with Zhong Xiuhan for the past 10 days? Look, you're already like this. Not to mention that she hasn't built her foundation. Even a normal aura-refining disciple wouldn't take you seriously, right? That's right, a toad lusting after a swan's meat. I have such thoughts too. All kinds of words floated in Zhong Haoren's ears. Zhong Haoren was speechless again. There was only a bitter smile on his face, and in the end, there was even some coldness. It was as if he was using another pair of eyes to coldly watch everyone's performance. The Zhong clan's master who was guiding Zhong Haoren's cultivation naturally knew about Zhong Haoren's situation. He painfully inspected Zhong Haoren's body, and sure enough, it was as Xiaohua had expected. They simply couldn't discover Xiaohua's forbidden technique, and it was also impossible for them to know the root cause of Zhong Haoren's muteness. Not to mention that Zhong Haoren was an aura-refining disciple. His master wouldn't directly report this situation to Zhong Tianyao. Now was a special time. Everyone's hearts were hanging in suspense, and they all hoped that Xiaohua would be executed so that they could escape with their lives. Zhong Tianyao also didn't have the heart to do chores. Therefore, Zhong Haoren's matter was like a small wave in the river, and after a slight surge, it disappeared. However, Zhong Haoren was somewhat puzzled about the fear of the Zhongling mountain villa's disciples. Because he had interacted with Xiaohua before, he knew Xiaohua's kindness. Since Xiaohua was willing to take out the heaven-mending pill for Zhong Xiuhan, he naturally wouldn't casually kill the Zhong clan's disciples. Besides, Xiaohua was with them the entire night during the recent dark of the moon. Where would he have the time to come to the Zhongling mountain villa to kill people? Unfortunately, Zhong Haoren couldn't speak now, so he naturally couldn't defend Xiaohua. Zhong Haoren also believed that the truth would come to light one day. He only needed to wait, and when that day came, he would definitely defend Xiaohua. Unfortunately, reality was always cruel. Zhong Haoren calmly faced what had happened, but the changes in the situation were far from what he could have predicted. Just before the day he had to defend Xiaohua had arrived, he had already noticed another change. And this change was something he didn't expect, or rather, something he had never thought of. Zhong Xiuhan had already failed to build her foundation once, but this time, her foundation building was very smooth. Moreover, with the medicinal efficacy of Xiaohua's heaven-mending pill, her realm after building her foundation was very stable. She only needed a few days of meditation to come out. The first thing Zhong Xiuhan did after coming out was naturally to look for Zhong Haoren. In fact, Zhong Xiuhan and Zhong Haoren lived very close to each other in the beginning. There were many aura-refining disciples in the Zhongling Mountain Villa, and these aura-refining disciples were divided into male and female groups to be managed. It was precisely because Zhong Xiuhan and Zhong Haoren originally had a close relationship that the two of them were put together when they traveled to the country of Xi last time. Contrary to Zhong Xiuhan's expectations, her appearance in front of the aura-refining disciples actually caused a sensation. Many of her old acquaintances flattered her in front of her, and all of their praises were piled up in front of her, as if she was the darling of the heavens. The previous coldness when her meridians were completely destroyed was completely swept away. This was beyond her expectations, and it made Zhong Xiuhan feel like she had returned to her hometown with honor. A kind of floating and fluttering atmosphere had always been permeating around her. And this kind of overflowing atmosphere and feeling of contentment actually made her unable to open her mouth to look for Zhong Haoren, and she couldn't even open her mouth to find an excuse to leave. Only when the sky turned dark did Zhong Xiuhan slightly collect her mood. Before she left, she casually asked about Zhong Haoren's situation. The aura-refining disciples all had a mysterious expression on their faces, and they quietly whispered in her ear. "Martial Uncle Xiuhan, you don't know! Zhong Haoren is now a mute, he can't say a single word. Moreover, he can't transmit his voice. Think about it, this kind of disciple, how can he still have a future? According to the teacher, the possibility of him entering the foundation building realm is also very small. Your martial uncle have you ever heard of a foundation building cultivator who can't be mute? Which gold core cultivator is a mute?" There were also disciples who flattered her. "Martial Uncle Xiuhan, we know you want to help Zhong Haoren because of your old friendship, but you have to think about it carefully. You are now a martial uncle in the foundation building realm. How can you be together with Zhong Haoren, a mute cultivator? You may be shameless because of your old friendship, but our Zhongling Mountain Village still cares about our reputation, and you foundation building cultivators also care about your reputation. Tisk, don't talk nonsense." Although Zhong Xiuhan disdained the words of these former sisters, and she knew the real reason why Zhong Haoren was a mute, but these words did sound reasonable. After hesitating for a while, she still couldn't find any reason not to look for Zhong Haoren. Zhong Haoren's hut was usually not lively, but it wasn't deserted either. However, when Zhong Xiuhan came, it was absolutely deserted. The situation was the same as what Zhong Xiuhan encountered at her former sister's place. A group of aura-refining disciples respectfully saluted her when they saw her. After she casually greeted them, they saw her go to look for Zhong Haoren, and their eyes were full of surprise. This surprise was definitely not a kind of compliment, but a kind of admiration. It was more like a sudden realization and a kind of ridicule. These gazes made Zhong Xiuhan's heart, which had just convinced herself, ripple again. However, when she saw Zhong Haoren and his indifferent look, an indescribable feeling suddenly rose in Zhong Xiuhan's heart. It seemed that this junior martial brother, who had followed her for many years, hadn't grown up yet. The attachment that she had just borne before had long disappeared. The sense of security that she urgently needed from Zhong Haoren had also disappeared after she returned to the Zhongling Mountain Village a few days after she entered the foundation building realm. In particular, when she opened her mouth, Zhong Xiuhan felt that she didn't know how to address Zhong Haoren. Today, she had played the role of martial uncle enough. "Haoren, are you okay?" Zhong Xiuhan said this with some regret in her heart. She hadn't seen Zhong Haoren for a few days, so what was wrong with him? Or perhaps he was mute, so how could he be okay? "You tell me about it with the jade slip." Zhong Xiuhan knew that Zhong Haoren couldn't answer her question. Zhong Haoren nodded, took out a jade slip, and handed it to Zhong Xiuhan. "Oh, I'm fine." Zhong Xiuhan scanned it with her divine sense and said with a smile, "The teachers were very surprised that I could enter the foundation building realm, so they specially examined me. You don't know how shocked they were at that time. Their mouths were wide open, and their eyes were also wide open. They couldn't believe that my meridians were repaired so perfectly. Did you know? Haoren, the heavenly pill's reputation is really not just for show. Not only are my meridians repaired, but they are also bigger than before. I heard from the teachers that my magic power will definitely be higher than those of the same level in the future, and I have a higher chance of entering the Golden Core realm. Howren, there are very few female cultivators in our Zhong family who enter the Golden Core realm. The teacher said that if nothing unexpected happens, I will be the first female cultivator to enter the Golden Core realm in thousands of years. After Zhong Xiuhan finished speaking, he said very gently, Howren, this is all thanks to you. However, I also swore a hard oath that I can't tell anyone. So, Zhong Howren listened patiently, and his eyes flashed with understanding. At this time, he very considerately stretched out his index finger and quietly placed it beside Zhong Xiuhan's mouth. Howren, you're so nice. Zhong Xiuhan's body stiffened, and then she snuggled into Zhong Howren's arms. However, Zhong Xiuhan clearly felt that the warmth on Zhong Howren's body was far from what it was a few days ago, and she even felt a little uncomfortable in her heart. This feeling made her feel very uneasy. Yes, she had just benefited from Zhong Howren. How could she suddenly become so unfamiliar? This unfamiliarity was caused by the environment of Zhongling Mountain Village, the difference between foundation establishment and Qi refinement, the difference between gratitude and love. How could Zhong Howren have thought that in just a few days, Zhong Xiuhan's heart would change so much? It was even more impossible for him to know that the woman in his arms was thinking about so many things. The two of them met for a very short time, and they parted after a while. Zhong Xiuhan did not set a time to meet Zhong Howren again, and only said that she would come to see him when she had time. At the same time, she also hoped that Zhong Howren could continue to cultivate and enter the foundation establishment realm as soon as possible. -8. Chapter 21-21. According to Zhong Howren's thinking, although there was no agreement, but, once I have time, wasn't that any time? But he was wrong, very wrong. Zhong Xiuhan's once I have time was actually more than 10 days later. And the second meeting was even shorter. It seemed that Zhong Xiuhan was cultivating some kind of technique. They only spoke a few words, and then left in a hurry. Then, there was no then. Because, in the blink of an eye, it was the third dark night. According to the pattern of Xiaohua's attack on Zhongling Villa, this night was bound to be a bloody night, a night where dozens of people lost their lives. If it wasn't for Zhong Tianyao order, the low-level disciples of Zhong clan would probably have fled from Zhongling Villa. After all, it was really terrifying. Xiaohua didn't ask the cultivation of his opponents, and killed them all with poison. Moreover, the number of people increased each time. Who knew whose turn it would be this time? Different from the vigilance of Zhongling Villa, Xiaohua was sitting in the cave with his eyes closed, meditating. He was taking medicinal pills and refining the earth crystal Yao milk. It was a rare leisure time, and the little bit of resentment in his heart towards Zhong clan had decreased by a lot. Xiaohua even wanted to put it aside first, and not push Zhong Tianyao too hard. He would wait for another opportunity to go to Zhongling Villa to look for those 2 gold sheets. But at this moment, Xiaohua's heart was moved. He opened his eyes and said with a smile, I've harassed them for many days. If I don't go, wouldn't they say that I started strong but ended weak? Besides, how is Zhong Howren and Zhong Xiuhan's situation? It's been almost a month. I have to go and take a look. Husband? You went out again? Shui smiled. She naturally knew that Xiaohua went against Zhong Tianyao for her. She knew Xiaohua's cautiousness and her flying speed, so she naturally wasn't too worried. But Zhong Tianyao was also a gold core cultivator. If he really lowered his face and chased after Xiaohua, it would be difficult to deal with him. And once a month! Not too much and not too little, Xiaohua said with a smile. This time, I'll go and have a chat with old Ghost Zhong. If he can take a step back, I'll give him some face as a gold core cultivator. I heard that the materials he used to repair his ancestral artifact were forcefully taken away by someone else. I'll see if I have any and give him some. Take it as a sign of good karma, and show some appreciation for the previous 2 disturbances. And Shue Shue smiled sweetly. This mistress knows that husband is soft-hearted. This matter has actually been delayed 3 times. It seems that Senior Zhong has really angered you. Of course. Xiaohua nodded and said, It doesn't matter if they threaten this husband, but if they threaten this husband's family, this husband will definitely not let them do as they wish. Husband, come back soon. Shue Shue nodded. I can already feel it. It seems I'm about to reach foundation establishment. Ah? Very good. Xiaohua clapped his hands and said, Then this husband will not go anywhere. I will stay here to protect you. Hee, how can it be so fast? Shue Shue pushed Xiaohua and said, This concubine only has some feeling. Xiaohua rolled his eyes and said, Even so, I still can't be careless. What kind of heaven-mend pill is this? Take it. If there's anything wrong with foundation establishment, take it without delay. As he spoke, Xiaohua gave the heaven-mending pill to Shue Shue. TSK. Shue Shue looked at the pill without any medicinal fragrance and curled her lips. Husband's pills are all strange. Other heaven-mending pills overflow with medicinal fragrance, but yours is better. It's so ugly that no one would want to take it. A good pill doesn't show its appearance. If it shows its appearance, it won't be good. Xiaohua patted Shue Shue's face and said with a smile, Wife, don't worry. One day, your husband's pill will definitely be hard to find in Xiaoyu continent. You're shameless. Shue Shue took the heaven-mending pill and ridiculed Xiaohua. Immediately, Xiaohua escaped from the cave and flew towards Zhongling Mountain Villa. Just as Zhong Xiuhan thought, Xiaohua flew to the vicinity of Zhongling Mountain Villa in a moment. However, when he approached Zhongling Mountain Villa, Xiaohua suddenly stopped. A feeling of uneasiness arose in his heart. Oh? Could it be that old ghost Zhong has some powerful method? Xiaohua was stunned. He immediately released his Buddhist sense and carefully checked. Why is this old ghost Zhong still guarding the ancestral hall? Could it be that there's something in the ancestral hall that can't be seen? Xiaohua looked for a long time and didn't find anything wrong. Thus, he boldly laughed and said, Today, this young master doesn't plan to destroy your family's spiritual plants. I'm only here to discuss conditions with you. There's nothing to be afraid of. Xiaohua flew to the sky above Zhongling Mountain Villa and said loudly, Zhong. Senior, this Xiao greets you. Boom. A burst of chaotic noise. Xiaohua's voice was like water falling into a pot of oil. In an instant, the entire Zhongling Mountain Villa was in chaos. Ha ha, this young master's fame is actually so great. Xiaohua's little tail actually stood up and he said with a smile, This way, I'm afraid old ghost Zhong will have to compromise. Xiaohua, you actually dare to appear in front of this old man. Hearing Xiaohua's voice, Zhong Tianyao swept his divine sense and also flew out. His face was very gloomy as he stood in midair. All of you, shut up. Haven't you seen the world? Zhong Tianyao was furious again and shouted at his feet. It's just a foundation establishment disciple from the Imperial Thunder Sect, and you're already so flustered. If other people saw this, wouldn't you lose face for my Zhong family? Under Zhong Tianyao's accumulated might, the noise instantly disappeared. Senior Zhong. Xiaohua didn't want to waste any time and bowed. Have you thought it through? This time, this Xiao came with great goodwill and wanted to make this deal with Senior Zhong. Of course, this Xiao also heard some rumors and knew that Senior was in a bad mood that day, so this junior had a misunderstanding. This junior has also thought it through. If Senior is willing, this junior can discuss with Senior and take out more materials. Unfortunately, without waiting for Xiaohua to fully express his sincerity, Zhong Tianyao angrily rebuked. Xiaohua, are you making fun of this old man? If you were sincere, I'm afraid the sun would have risen from the west. If you were sincere, how could you be so ruthless? My Zhong family has hundreds of lives. Although they are all unranked cultivators, but they are also people, the direct descendants of my Zhong family. Moreover, there are also a few dying children. Can you really do it? Ah? Xiao Hua was stunned and said curiously, This Xiao only took some spiritual herbs from your Zhongling mountain villa. It's not worth a few spirit stones. Moreover, the place where you refined the tools, pay. How could Zhong Tianyao let him continue speaking? With a wave of his hand, a magic treasure that looked like a deer's antler appeared and shouted, Don't try to quibble. If you still think you're a man and a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect, then don't run away. This old man will avenge the hundreds of lives of my Zhong family. -8. Chapter 21-22. Ouch! Xiao Hua suddenly remembered the scream he heard last time and hurriedly waved his hand. Senior Zhong, I'm afraid you misunderstood. I've never killed a single person from your Zhong family. What I did was... How could Zhong Tianyao listen to Xiao Hua's explanation? With a wave of his magic weapon, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered over. Several powerful currents of air were born from the antlers, and like a large open hand, they pounced towards Xiao Hua. Within a few dozen meters of Xiao Hua, countless tiny whirlpools suddenly condensed and gradually rotated, and began to attack Xiao Hua from all directions. Alas! If he didn't know before, Xiao Hua would have chosen to fly away without hesitation. After all, there was no reason to fight a golden core cultivator head-on. But now, he couldn't leave. He had to think about whether he should stay and explain to Zhong Tianyao. But at this moment, in a corner of Zhongling Mountain Villa, a black shadow flew up from the ground. This black shadow flew very slowly, and it seemed that its cultivation wasn't high. Xiao Hua scanned with his divine sense, and immediately understood that it was Zhong Haoren. Xiao Hua nodded inwardly, knowing that Zhong Haoren was explaining for him. Get down! Just as Zhong Haoren flew up, Zhong Peiyuan, who was standing at the side, immediately stopped him and scolded angrily. You're just a little kid, what are you showing off for? Zhong Peiyuan used a confinement technique, and Zhong Haoren fell to the ground, unable to get up again. Where's Zhong Xiuhan? Naturally, Xiao Hua also thought of Zhong Xiuhan. Unfortunately, he didn't have the time to look for Zhong Xiuhan, because the angry attack of a golden core cultivator wasn't easy to deal with. Xiao Hua had no choice but to use all his strength to deal with it. Moreover, Xiao Hua also forgot that he made Zhong Xiuhan swear that he couldn't say anything about seeing him. He was now somewhat trapped in a cocoon of his own making. What? Senior Zhong, you want to bully the weak? Xiao Hua's heart tightened, but he still looked relaxed on the surface. With a wave of his hand, the soaring dragon shears flew out, and the faint golden light flashed in everyone's eyes. When you killed over 100 people of my Zhong family, why didn't you think of bullying the weak? Zhong Tianyao sneered, and the antlers in his hand slashed down without restraint. This Xiao has already said that this Xiao definitely did not kill a single person from your Zhong family. This Xiao naturally has evidence in my hands. Xiao Hua urged his magic power and flicked his sleeves. A huge amount of magic power was generated, and the vortex that was swarming towards Xiao Hua was destroyed by Xiao Hua's heaven and earth sleeve. Countless amounts of heaven and earth spirit chi scattered in all directions. At the same time, Xiao Hua's soaring dragon scissors slashed through the air. The golden light was dazzling, and the many streams of air that could tear flesh apart were cut in half. The remaining power of the soaring dragon scissors hadn't dissipated, and the magic treasure of the antlers was also slightly lifted. Universe Creator? Zhong Tianyao's eyes narrowed. You're actually related to Scarlet Island? However, no matter what your background is, you will not be able to escape from my hands tonight. I would like to see what qualifications a foundation establishment cultivator like you has to challenge me. The antlers in Zhong Tianyao's hand trembled slightly. Immediately after, his magic power surged again, and a shadow flew out from the antlers, smashing towards Xiao Hua with the force of 1,000 caddies. Just as the shadow flew out, it had an astonishing aura, as if it was suppressing Xiao Hua's entire body. The true essence that was originally flowing like mercury actually began to stagnate, and Xiao Hua's magic power was also somewhat lacking. This old ghost seems to be going all out. Xiao Hua understood in his heart, but he was still somewhat puzzled. Zhong Peiyuan and Zhong Peifu were not far from him. If it was any other day, they would have already rushed out, but today, it was somewhat strange, and they didn't come forward. Could it be? Old Ghost Zhong has other plans? Xiao Hua suddenly thought of the warning signs from before, and immediately urged his magic power. He pointed his finger, and the soaring dragon scissors slashed towards the antler's shadow. At the same time, his figure leaped, and he flew out of Zhongling Mountain Villa. Clang! A loud sound rang out. The soaring dragon scissors' golden light struck the shadow, and unexpectedly, there was the sound of metal and stone colliding. The soaring dragon scissors was struck back, and the shadow also swayed twice. In the end, it gradually dimmed, and disappeared in mid-air. Hiss! Zhong Tianyao sucked in a breath of cold air. He finally understood the power of Xiao Hua's soaring dragon scissors. However, when he saw Xiao Hua escape, he didn't chase after him. He raised his hand, and actually released the pressure of a golden core cultivator. He coldly said, Xiao Hua, little brat, you only know now that you want to leave, don't you think it's too late? Following Zhong Tianyang's sneer, he released his pressure. Inside Zhongling Mountain Villa, in front of Xiao Hua's fleeing direction, two similar pressures appeared. Along with the pressure, it was actually Qin Kai and Fei Xiqing. Golden core cultivators! Shock flashed through Xiao Hua's eyes. He really didn't expect Zhong Tianyao to hate him so much that he actually invited two golden core cultivators to kill him. Seeing three mountain-like pressures rushing towards him from three directions, and that pressure enveloped his entire body, a sense of powerlessness and helplessness rose from his heart. Fight! Xiao Hua forcibly restrained the shock in his heart, and made a decision in his heart. Being besieged by three golden core cultivators was definitely more difficult than being chased by a nascent soul cultivator last time. Xiao Hua patted his forehead, and released his own pressure. Unfortunately, his pressure could only block one of them. The feeling of being imprisoned in his heart was still there. Fortunately, at the same time Xiao Hua released his pressure, his body trembled, and the Phoenix Dharma body also rushed out of his body. A resonant phoenix cry resounded through the entire night sky, and its aura soared into the sky as it diffused, resisting the remaining two pressures. At the same time, Xiao Hua also used the heaven-concealing art, and his body swayed within the pressure, barely able to resist it. Ouch! Not only was Zhong Tianyao surprised, even Qin Kai and Fei Xiqing were greatly surprised. These three people had a good idea. They thought that if they only surrounded Xiao Hua, he would have nowhere to go. Wouldn't the Jinan pressure of the three people suppress Xiao Hua to death? The three of them simply didn't need to use any transcendence energy to capture Xiao Hua. But just when Zhong Tianyao was surprised, he saw Xiao Hua's body suddenly swim like a fish, and under the pressure, he suddenly rushed into the sky. He wants to escape! Fellow Taoists, help me! Zhong Tianyao sneered in a low voice, and with a short shout, he flicked his big sleeve. In the sky, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth within 100 feet was suddenly swept up, and thumb-sized wind blades were formed, coordinating with Zhong Tianyao's technique. Qin Kai stretched out his hand, and a spark flew into the air. That spark flew faster than Xiao Hua, and with a light ping sound, it exploded into thousands of even smaller sparks. These sparks were embedded in the many wind blades. The wind and fire rotated, and the momentum was extremely fierce as it enveloped Xiao Hua's body. What a ruthless method! Xiao Hua sneered. He understood in his heart that these wind and fire blades not only had extremely strong spiritual energy of heaven and earth, they also had extremely great strength and extremely sharpness. Any one of them could break through a cultivator's defense and directly penetrate into the body if they hit a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator. Moreover, this didn't count as anything. What made Xiao Hua suffer the most was that Zhong Tianyao and Qin Kai's technique had already sucked away the spiritual energy of heaven and earth around Xiao Hua. Other than using his own true essence to generate transcendence energy, Xiaohua simply couldn't borrow the slightest bit of spiritual energy from the outside world. The true essence of a golden core cultivator condensed in the golden core was completely dozens of times more powerful than the true essence of a foundation establishment cultivator. The transcendence energy they could generate in a short period of time was also dozens of times more than that of a foundation establishment cultivator. In this kind of situation, Xiaohua was completely at a disadvantage. Zhong Tianyao and the other two's plan was meticulously planned. Unfortunately, how could Xiaohua be a simple foundation establishment cultivator? Xiaohua waved his hand and the earth shield technique was first produced. An earthen yellow brilliance of several tens of feet in size flashed, blocking Xiaohua's head. Rumble! A wave of rumbling sounds immediately came out. The earthen yellow brilliance only lasted for a moment under the wind and fire blades before loudly dispersing. Less than 40% of the wind and fire blades still smashed down like a storm. Although Xiaohua's earth shield technique collapsed under the wind and fire blades, Xiaohua's transcendence energy was already enough to shock Qin Kai and the others once again. He couldn't help but look at Fei Xiqing. His gaze was very obvious. Didn't you say that Xiaohua's flying speed was extremely fast? He looked at Fei Xiqing again and saw that she was also frowning slightly. It was unknown what she was thinking about. Go! Xiaohua's figure didn't slow down at all. At the same time as he tried his best to break free from the pressure, he waved his hand again and ignited the true Samadhi fire. A wall of fire rolled over and rushed towards the wind and fire blades. True Samadhi fire? Seeing this, Qin Kai's expression subconsciously changed. He already understood that his and Zhong Tianyao's techniques were most likely unable to block Xiaohua. Sure enough, the wall of fire of the true Samadhi fire surged up violently, and instantly engulfed all the wind and fire blades. The entire night sky was ignited by Xiaohua. Ha ha ha! At this moment, Xiaohua's figure suddenly accelerated and was about to rush into the wall of fire. Xiaohua, you are indeed powerful! So powerful that it is beyond this old man's expectations. Zhong Tianyao's voice sounded again. However, if you want to escape from this old man's hands today, it will be extremely difficult. Fellow Taoist Fei, are you still not going to make a move? Following Zhong Tianyao's sneer, the antlers in Zhong Tianyao's hand suddenly waved. A faint green brilliance flashed on the antlers, and dozens of antler phantoms flew out, blocking Xiaohua's head. These phantoms were several times more powerful than the wind-fire blade from before. As soon as they appeared, they sucked in the spiritual qi of heaven and earth from all around. Within the green brilliance, a sharp light that was comparable to a flying sword flickered, piercing straight towards Xiaohua. Hiss! Xiaohua's divine sense swept over and clearly saw the situation of the antlers gradually solidifying. He slightly inhaled and urged his true essence. Wherever the magic power passed, the soaring dragon scissors flew out again. Go! At the same time Xiaohua raised the soaring dragon scissors, Fei Xiqing also had no choice but to make a move. He slapped his hand and a bull-sized fiery red pearl was taken out from his storage bag. Under the urging of his magic power, it was like the rising sun and smashed towards Xiaohua's back. Compared to Zhong Tianyao's antlers, the boundless heat from the fiery red pearl and the might of a magic treasure instantly enveloped Xiaohua's entire body. It made Xiaohua feel a sense of insignificance, like a moth flying into a flame. Jie! With a cry, the phoenix battle form flapped its wings. A gust of wind was generated from its wings, stirring up the 3 waves of pressure. The phoenix battle form took the opportunity to soar and charge towards Zhong Tianyao. Those sharp phoenix claws suddenly grabbed towards Zhong Tianyao. -8. Chapter 21-23. Swoosh! Amidst the phoenix cry, the golden light of the soaring dragon shears swept past the layers of deer antlers' shadows. The soaring dragon scissors did not disappoint Xiaohua. It easily split all the deer antlers into 2 halves. The deer antlers turned into nothingness once again. Of course, Xiaohua also consumed a lot of magic power. The golden light of the soaring dragon scissors was slightly dim. However, the soaring dragon scissors were already exhausted. It was too late to deal with the light pearl. The fiery red fireball was already 1 zhang away from Xiaohua's back. Rise! Xiaohua was slightly panicked. He waved his right hand again and took out the cloud-suppressing seal. Xiaohua did not have time to pour too much magic power into it. He used the cloud-suppressing seal to block the light pearl. Boom! This was the most earth-shattering collision since the start of the battle between the 4 of them. The cloud-suppressing seal was sent flying diagonally to one side by Lai Zhu, while Lai Zhu was also sent flying back several feet. Naturally, Xiaohua, who was controlling the cloud-suppressing seal, also paused for a moment. At this time, there was another loud noise. Pun! The deer antlers in Zhong Tianyao hand hit the claws of Xiaohua's phoenix dharma body. The magic power surging on the antlers was like a stormy sea, knocking Xiaohua's dharma body back. Coincidentally, it hit right in front of Xiaohua's body. Xiaohua's body suddenly fell down again. I'll fight you! Xiaohua tried his best to stabilize his body and dharma body. It seemed that all the magic power in his body was surging into the soaring dragon scissors. The soaring dragon scissors flashed again and slashed at the light pearl. Humph, no matter how powerful you are, you're just a foundation establishment cultivator. Do you think you can overturn this old man's hand? Qin Kai sneered. His body swayed and magic power surged. The light pearl became 3 times bigger and quickly smashed at the soaring dragon scissors. Swoosh! The soaring dragon scissors was like a snake that had its tail stepped on. It was smashed back. The light pearl was not much stronger. It was also sent flying back. What made Zhong Tianyao even more surprised was that Xiaohua's complexion changed rapidly. At the same time his figure fell from midair, Qin Kai, who was a Jindan stage cultivator, actually had his face change several times in an instant. His figure also flew diagonally along with the fierce speed for several zhang. His eyes flashed with an inconceivable expression. Zhong Tianyao. Who on earth did you offend? Qin Kai opened his mouth slightly. From the expression on his face, it was obvious that he had suffered some internal injuries. He's a foundation establishment cultivator? How would I know? Zhong Tianyao forcefully suppressed the turmoil in his heart and said coldly, Even if you're a golden core cultivator, you can forget about leaving my Zhong family alive today. But... Qin Kai looked hesitant. He understood that a foundation establishment cultivator might be nothing in the eyes of the Imperial Thunder Sect, but what about a golden core cultivator? Would the Imperial Thunder Sect give up? If this disciple's spirit tablet was damaged, the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples would immediately come out to search for it. While Qin Kai was hesitating, Xiaohua fell several feet. At this moment, a sudden change occurred. Xiaohua's figure suddenly floated up again. Like a sharp arrow, his figure fell rapidly and rushed towards the ground of the Zhongling Mountain Villa. Unfortunately, Zhong Tianyao seemed to have long known that he had the ability to escape through the earth. Fei Xiqing, who had been staying at the side without making a move, waved her hand. A ball of fire sprayed out and blocked Xiaohua's body. When the fire spread out, Xiaohua saw clearly that the fire wasn't real fire, but a fire carpet that was like magma spread all over. That fire carpet isolated Xiaohua's spiritual sense and couldn't see through it. The flames on the fire carpet were several feet long and rushed towards Xiaohua. Damn it, how did old Ghost Zhong know that this young master was going to escape through the earth? Xiaohua was really anxious when he saw that his tactic of creating a diversion to the east and attacking the west, which he had always been undefeated in 100 battles, had been seen through in advance. After all, there weren't many people who knew how to escape through the earth in the Dawn Rain continent. Xiaohua didn't show any signs of escaping through the earth in front of Zhong Tianyao because he wanted to escape when he was caught off guard. But now, he was actually intercepted by a golden core cultivator in advance. He was really flustered and exasperated. What should I do? What should I do? Xiaohua was somewhat at his wits' end. His final trump card was the spiritual fire. That spiritual fire could still only be used twice now. He couldn't judge whether a spiritual fire could kill a golden core cultivator. Go! Xiaohua didn't give up. Under the situation where his body didn't change, the Tang Jiao shears flew out again. An even stronger golden light flashed and chopped at the fire carpet. With a boom, the scarlet flames on the fire carpet suddenly rose. Like several hundred fire snakes, they twined around the Tang Jiao shears and blocked the Tang Jiao shears' chopping power. Only a small amount of the golden light slashed on the fire carpet. The flames on the fire carpet were reduced by a small amount for a moment, then immediately soared again. Damn it! At this time, how could Xiaohua not know that this fire carpet was precisely what Zhong Tianyao found to deal with his Tingjiao shears? There's nowhere to run! Xiaohua hurriedly released his Buddhist sense, anxiously looking for a flaw in his surroundings. Unfortunately, not to mention that his entire body was still under the majesty of the three golden core cultivators. Even without their majesty, the three had already sealed off many of Xiaohua's escape routes. Even if Xiaohua wanted to escape, he didn't have the slightest path of retreat. Demonic weapon, spiritual fire, flying sword, soul technique. Xiaohua's mind spun rapidly, and at this time, the entire fire carpet suddenly enlarged again amidst Fei Xiqing's laughter. It rolled upwards and wrapped Xiaohua's entire body in an instant. Ha ha ha, Zhong Tianyao laughed loudly. He was very clear in his heart that no matter how fast Xiaohua's flying speed was or how profound his magic power was, once he fell into Fei Xiqing's magic treasure, he could only be burned to death. But just as Zhong Tianyao was laughing loudly, he saw a burst of flames soaring into the sky from within the fire carpet. Within the rolling flames, Xiaohua actually went against the flow. Moreover, as Xiaohua rushed out, a yellow and black figure flew out. Especially the yellow figure, it didn't fear the majesty of a golden core cultivator in the slightest. Like the wind, it rushed into the sky and flew towards Zhong Tianyao. On the other hand, the black figure only flew a foot before stopping in midair, revealing a slightly curled-up divine power centipede. Spiritual beast? Zhong Tianyao groaned in his heart. He really didn't expect Xiaohua's methods to be so uneven. He even brought out the specialty of spirit husbandry sect. Moreover, this spiritual beast was actually not afraid of the majesty of a golden core cultivator. It was definitely a spiritual beast of the 5th grade and above. How could an ordinary cultivator of the Foundation establishment stage raise a 5th grade spiritual beast? Any cultivator with a brain would be able to sniff out something unusual from this. Could it be that the hundreds of lives of my Zhong family are just... Zhong Tianyao felt a wave of sadness in his heart. Just as he was hesitating, Goldie had already flown in front of him. The sharp claws that Goldie extended before Zhong Tianyao's eyes flickered with a blue brilliance. It was obviously extremely toxic. Needless to say, Zhong Tianyao immediately linked this poison to the death of the Zhong family's disciple. -8. Chapter 21-24. Humph! Zhong Tianyao's heart ached. He waved his sleeves, and a gust of wind blocked Goldie's front. Goldie waved its claws, and the gust of wind was torn apart. Its claws even scratched Zhong Tianyao's robe. Damn it! Zhong Tianyao's eyes flashed with ruthlessness. He waved the antlers in his hand again, and dozens of wind blades rushed toward Goldie. However, the situation was out of Zhong Tianyao's expectations. Goldie was actually able to move freely among the wind blades. Some wind blades even pierced its body, but it was as if they didn't pierce it. This spiritual beast is a rare wind attribute. Zhong Tianyao immediately understood. Just as he was about to use another spell, Goldie pounced in front of him again. Zhong Tianyao had no choice but to fly slightly. Just as he was flying, something strange happened. Behind Goldie, in the air where Qin Kai was standing, a palm-sized black shadow suddenly flew out from Qin Kai's sleeve. That shadow was extremely fast, and it didn't have the slightest fluctuation of spiritual power. At the same time, it wasn't afraid of the pressure of a golden core. In the blink of an eye, it flew behind Goldie. "Oh no, this guy actually has a spiritual beast. I'm afraid Goldie will be at a disadvantage." Xiaohua used fire escape to escape from the fire carpet. Seeing that the Herculean centipede couldn't defeat the enemy, he hurriedly put it back into the space. Then, he saw the black shadow released by Qin Kai. However, Zhong Tianyao was different. His line of sight was blocked by Goldie's swaying tail, so he couldn't see clearly. Contrary to Xiaohua's expectations, that black shadow didn't pounce toward Goldie. Instead, it swept past Goldie and pounced toward Zhong Tianyao. "Ah!" Xiaohua was shocked. A ridiculous feeling of coming back from the jaws of death surged in his heart. However, at this time, Fei Xiqing's fire carpet once again swept up from top to bottom, and it didn't have any intention of stopping. "Understood," Xiaohua sneered and thought to himself. "These two golden core cultivators are probably plotting something from the Zhong family. Zhong Tianyao guards the ancestral hall every day and doesn't easily go out. That thing must be in the ancestral hall." The two golden core cultivators did not dare to enter the Zhongling mountain villa rashly. It was precisely because Zhong Tianyao was dealing with this young master that they took the opportunity to enter. At this time, Zhong Tianyao was concentrating on dealing with young master and little Huang, so this golden core cultivator's spiritual beast was able to take advantage of the situation and kill Zhong Tianyao. If they missed this moment, Zhong Tianyao's vigilance would rise again, and they probably wouldn't have a chance. I believe that the hundreds of lives Zhong Tianyao mentioned were also the handiwork of these two golden core cultivators, right? Xiaohua suddenly came to a realization. Moreover, the golden core cultivator under this young master actually didn't let go even though the sneak attack was about to succeed. This was also because he wanted to silence me and didn't want this young master to leak the news that they had obtained something from the Zhongling mountain villa. However, with one less golden core cultivator, can you trap me? Xiaohua grinned maliciously. He pretended to fly with all his might, but his magic power was exhausted. He was actually wrapped up by the fire carpet again. The phoenix celestial body also let out a mournful cry and shrank back into Xiaohua's body. Xiaohua was wrapped up by the fire carpet, and that black shadow passed by little Huang and pounced in front of Zhong Tianyao. It was exactly the appearance of a black bat. This black bat not only gave little Huang a fright, but also made Zhong Tianyao so scared that his soul flew out of his body. Ever since he cultivated to the golden core stage, how could he let any person or spiritual beast get so close to him? However, even though Zhong Tianyao was scared out of his wits, since this black bat had already silently flown close, how could Zhong Tianyao still have the strength to fight back? The black bat rushed to the front of Zhong Tianyao's mouth and opened its mouth. 2 rows of sharp teeth that were like human teeth were exposed, and it bit towards Zhong Tianyao's lips. Zhong Tianyao's mind moved slightly, and he activated the light protecting his body, hoping that the light protecting his body could resist for a moment. The spell in his hands had already been formed. However, the black bat's teeth were so sharp, and it was so powerful, how could it allow Zhong Tianyao to cast a spell? The light on Zhong Tianyao's lips flashed rapidly, and it was annihilated in an instant. The black bat's teeth were like a lover's intimately biting Zhong Tianyao's lips. A stream of black blood immediately flowed out. And that black bat didn't stop at all. It flapped its wings slightly, and with an extremely strange glide, it flew to another place. A numb feeling entered Zhong Tianyao's mind, and a shock that came from the bottom of his heart suddenly appeared, as if being bitten by that bat would be the end of his life, as if being bitten by that bat, his soul would fall into the netherworld. Nether bat! Zhong Tianyao immediately thought of a legend and exclaimed. His hands didn't dare to be negligent. With a clap of his hand, a thumb-sized spirit pill was taken out, and he swallowed it. Looking at Lil Huang again, seeing that the nether bat had bitten Zhong Tianyao, it actually didn't attack anymore. Instead, it swung its big tail and flew to the other side of Zhong Tianyao. It was actually using Zhong Tianyao's figure to avoid Qin Kai. At this time, how could Zhong Tianyao still care about little Huang? On one hand, he used his spiritual power to activate the medicinal power of the detoxification pill, trying his best to resist the poison of the nether bat. On the other hand, he looked fiercely at Qin Kai, and also Fei Xiqing, who was proudly and leisurely driving the fire carpet. Looks like this old man has wrongly blamed Xiao Hua. Zhong Tianyao body trembled slightly. The 100 lives of my Zhong family were caused by fellow Taoist Qin. Humph. Qin Kai treated Zhong Tianyao as nothing, and only locked his spiritual sense onto little Huang, thinking about how to deal with it. He said, "It's a pity that this old man can't drive the nether bat at will. This thing can only fly out on a moonless night, and it can't directly find you, old ghost Zhong. This old man has always wanted to invite you out, and directly kill you with the nether bat. It's a pity that this old man has asked you out a few times, but you didn't come out, so old ghost Fei came up with this idea. Anyway, the nether bat is also a killer. If it can meet you, wouldn't this old man save a lot of effort?" "You!" Zhong Tianyao pointed his finger, but he understood in his heart that Qin Kai and Fei Xiqing's poisonous plan wasn't poisonous, nor was it ineffective. Thinking about the moonless night, this nether bat couldn't be detected by spiritual sense. Even if it really poisoned him to death, it was highly possible. Anyway, the people who died were all from the Zhong family, and Qin Kai and Fei Xiqing would be happy if one more died. As for Xiao Hua, he only interfered occasionally, and really had nothing to do with this matter. As for him, in order to deal with an unrelated outsider, he actually lured his two enemies into the Zhongling mountain village. His actions were simply inviting a wolf into the house. And even if Xiao Hua had the intention to kill the Zhong family, he was also an idiot who invited the tiger to drive the wolf away. "Old ghost Zhong, don't be delusional and thinking of curing the poison." Seeing Zhong Tianyao activating his supernatural power, Qin Kai said disdainfully, "This old man has already investigated clearly. Your antidote pill is simply unable to cure the poison of this nether bat. To tell you the truth, even this old man doesn't have any antidote in his hands. If you want to cure the poison, you should first see if there's any antidote secret art in that ancient refining method of yours. Your Qin family and Fei family, don't they have their own refining methods? Why do you still covet my Zhong families?" Zhong Tianyao struggled to stabilize himself in midair, and sighed. Qin Kai seemed to not recognize Zhong Tianyao as he clapped his hands and said, "Old ghost Zhong, you're also someone who has lived for hundreds of years. How can you not know this Qin's thoughts? That's an ancient refining method. If my Qin family and Fei family grasped it, we could directly establish a sect and occupy a place among the cultivation sects in Ming country. Is there still a need for this old man to explain the difference between a cultivation sect and a cultivation family? Didn't you see that a foundation establishment disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect actually has so many methods? Even a gold core stage patriarch like you can't do anything about it. If this old man and the others didn't come over, how could you subdue Xiao Hua? However, this ancient refining method, in the end, should be given to the Qin family? Or to the Fei family?" Zhong Tianyao said thoughtfully. "Ha ha ha, not only Qin Kai, but Fei Xiqing also laughed. You don't need to worry about this, we naturally have a way to distribute it." As she spoke, Fei Xiqing made a grabbing motion with her hand, and the fire carpet wrapped around Xiao Hua actually gradually shrunk and flew towards Fei Xiqing's hand. As for Fei Xiqing's other hand, it was obvious that she had already formed a seal and was waiting for the fire carpet to enter her hand. Although Qin Kai was talking to Zhong Tianyao, his mind was still on Xiao Huang. However, Xiao Huang was on the other side of Zhong Tianyao, staring at Fei Xiqing with its bright eyes, as if it had already understood something, causing Qin Kai to be really puzzled. Seeing Fei Xiqing's fire carpet enter her hand, Xiao Huang's eyes suddenly moved, as if it was happy. Qin Kai immediately felt that something was wrong, and while controlling the nether bat to attack Xiao Huang, he anxiously said, "Fellow Taoist Fei, be careful." "Be careful?" Fei Xiqing was puzzled and unconsciously swept her divine sense towards Xiao Huang. But at this moment, an extremely dazzling crimson brilliance flashed out from the fiery red brilliance of the fire carpet. It was Fei Xiqing's hand that was holding onto the fire carpet. The scarlet brilliance had already flashed, completely covering the flames on the fire carpet. Wasn't this scarlet flame Xiaohua's spirit fire? It was the spirit fire that had already been tempered by breaking the blood-colored seal in the flame forest swamp. If it encountered other magic treasures, Xiaohua wouldn't dare to rashly try it. But facing a fire-type magic treasure like the fire carpet, Xiaohua wasn't afraid at all. Sure enough, in Xiaoheng's voice transmission, Xiaohua aimed at Fei Xiqing's hand and used the thread-like spirit fire to burn the fire carpet. The thread-like spirit fire was like a cocoon that covered the sky and wrapped around Fei Xiqing. This is bad! He immediately sensed that Fei Xiqing's fire carpet had been burnt apart. However, before his divine perception could sweep over, the spiritual fire had already burned his left hand. He saw the protective light on Fei Xiqing's body flickering rapidly, and was instantly destroyed. It was as easy as how the hell bat had destroyed Zhong Tianyao's protective light. Ah? This isn't Samadhi true fire! Fei Xiqing turned pale with fright. He was a master refiner. Although he wasn't too proficient in Samadhi true fire, he still had a way to restrain it. Therefore, he didn't care too much about Xiaohua's Samadhi true fire. However, when the spiritual light easily broke through the defensive brilliance protecting his body and nimbly wrapped around him, he suddenly realized he really underestimated this foundation establishment disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. -8. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.